Chapter 369. Star Alliance was not only interested in a thread. Rumor had it that Star Sage Dust was still pursuing the leader of a thread, love thread. Gossip about love made this matter even more eye-catching. For a while, the capital became the focus of adventure-type players. Ouyang Shua also had thoughts about a thread. Previously, Ouyang Shua had been recruiting potential life profession players through the Morning Snow Rose mercenary group. A thread was highly compatible with his needs. Ouyang Shua was waiting for an opportunity. He had already ordered Black Snake to mobilize the power of the Black Snake Guards and pay close attention to the progress of the capital. Ouyang Shua remembered that in his previous life, a thread was eventually suppressed by crisscrossing sword aura. The strange thing was that a thread did not join crisscrossing sword aura. Instead, it completely disappeared from the sight of the players. The whereabouts of the thread became a mystery. Rumor had it that a thread became disheartened and completely retired, becoming a casual player. As the month of March drew to a close, the footsteps of spring came slowly. With the breath of spring, everything began to recover, and the wilderness once again became full of vitality. Spring was the start of the year. For the lords, the spring sowing season had already quietly arrived. After experiencing an unforgettable food crisis, every lord did not dare to slack off. They personally supervised the spring sowing in their territories to ensure the harvest of the first half of the year. On the 25th of March, Ouyang Shua ended his inspection of Lianzhou County and returned to Shanghai City. As soon as he returned, Meng Jida, the manager of the Bank of the Four Seas, came to find him. After a few months of preparation, the first batch of banknotes was finally printed. Meng Jida rushed over to hand over the banknotes to Ouyang Shua for approval. Ouyang Shua took a banknote with a face value of 100 gold coins from Meng Jida and examined it. In ancient times, there were only two colors, black and white. The banknote in front of him was slightly larger than the 100 yuan banknote in reality. The pattern on the back of the banknote was a panoramic view of the Lianzhou Basin, which was sampled from the geomancy map of Lianzhou. The front used the logo of the Lord's flag. Previously, Meng Jida suggested using Ouyang Shua's portrait, but he rejected it. In addition to the quality of the printing, the key point was how to deal with the security of the banknote. Due to the limited conditions in ancient times, Meng Jida could only adopt a primitive method, which was to stamp the seal of the Marquis of Lianzhou on each banknote. The Lianzhou Marquis seal was the seal of the feudal vassals and could not be imitated. There was only one such seal in the world. Anyone who dares to imitate it will have their entire family exterminated. With Ouyang Shua's approval, the banknotes would be officially released on April 1st. Coincidentally, the equipment that he had given to Snow Rose to sell had also been sold out. In the end, Ouyang Shua obtained 286,700 gold coins. 130,000 gold coins were used to cover the cost of establishing the Black Snake Guard. Ouyang Shua kept another 50,000 gold coins as backup, and the remaining 100,000 gold coins were all invested into the Bank of the Four Seas to support the issuance of paper money. It just so happened that Ouyang Shua also needed to increase his support for Tianchuan County through the Bank of the Four Seas. Although Song Wen's brother-in-law lacked boldness, he was very experienced when it came to handling matters. With Ouyang Shua's support, he officially established the Mountain and Sea Alliance Heavenly Frost Alliance in Lingnan to fight against the Southern Alliance. All of a sudden, the Lords of Southridge began a new round of selection. Of course, the leader of the Southern Alliance, Budahi, was not someone easy to deal with. The confrontation between the two had just begun. Ouyang Shua naturally sat on the fishing platform and watched the storm in Lingnan. The next day, accompanied by Du Ruhui, Ouyang Shua attended the unveiling ceremony of the Military Force Lecture Hall. In fact, as early as a week ago, the Army Martial Arts Lecture Hall had already been completed. It was only because they were waiting for Ouyang Shua, the Lord and Honorary Principal of the Military Force Lecture Hall, that the unveiling ceremony was delayed until now. After the unveiling, a system announcement spread throughout the China server. System announcement. The representative of the school of the military, War Saint Sun Wu, has settled down in the Shanghai territory to preside over the military lecture hall and accept disciples. At the same time, he has fulfilled the 3 requirements for a school to settle down in the Shanghai city. System announcement. The School of the Military of the 100 Schools of Thought has officially entered Shanghai City. Shanghai City will be given the title of Holy Land of the Military as a reward. Congratulations to player, don't say you're naked. The unveiling of the Land Army Martial Lecture Hall meant that the militarists now had a public dojo in Shanghai City. The first batch of students from the Land Army Martial Arts Hall had a total of 100 students, and they were divided into Class A and Class B. The students were all active duty officers recommended by the various divisions, which just happened to fulfill the 3rd condition for the guild to be stationed in the territory. With that, the School of the Military entering Shanghai City was naturally a matter of course. As soon as the announcement was made, the China server naturally became lively again. Fortunately, when the news of War Saint Sun Wu settling down in Shanghai City came out, the players already had a premonition that the School of the Military would be taken in by Shanghai City sooner or later, so they weren't too surprised. All they felt was envy. With this influence, the Military Force Lecture Hall also officially became famous in the China server. However, Ouyang Shuo felt a little regretful. This was because the School of the Military wasn't one of the 10 schools of the 9 classes. The entry of the School of the Military wouldn't be of any help to the 100 Schools of Thought Contend Again mission that he had previously accepted. The 10 schools of thought refer to the School of Confucianism, School of Taoism, School of Moism, School of Legalism, School of Yin-Yang, School of Vertical and Horizontal, School of Miscellany, School of Agriculture, and School of Novels. The School of Novels of the 10 schools of thought belong to the category of arts and literature. The School of the Military only appeared later, during the Spring and Autumn Warring States period, when hundreds of schools of thought contended. The School of the Military didn't form its own school. Therefore, the School of the Military wasn't included in the list of the 10 schools of the 9 classes. Ouyang Shuo suppressed the regret in his heart and checked the attributes of the title, Holy Land of the Military. Holy Land of the Military. The leveling speed of soldiers increased by 10. The success rate of territorial generals breaking through bottlenecks increased by 10. The quality of territorial soldiers increased by 15, and the morale of territorial troops increased by 10. After checking the attributes, Ouyang Shuo's regret immediately disappeared. The title, Holy Land of the Military, was simply a comprehensive upgrade for the territorial army. It was really too powerful. It could be foreseen that with the blessing of this title, the army would welcome a large number of mid-level generals in the future. Even high-level generals would no longer be an extravagant hope. Compared to this, the 100 schools of thought contend again was not important. Of course, if he completed the 100 schools of thought contend again, he would be rewarded with the title Holy Land of Culture. Its attributes would definitely be even more terrifying. Just thinking about it made him excited. 27th of March, Shanghai City. After the North Sea Fleet completed the escort mission of the 3rd batch of immigrants, they had already returned to the North Sea port under Ouyang Shuo's instructions. The scattered pirates around Jingzhou Island had already been wiped out by the North Sea Fleet. In addition, Cliff Mountain City had already established a foothold in the Cliff Province, so they naturally didn't need the protection of the North Sea Fleet. Even if they needed it, they would establish a new naval fleet in the Cliff Province. The North Sea Fleet's responsibility was still to protect North Sea City, guard the sea passes of Lianzhou County, and patrol the waters of the North Bay at the same time. Therefore, strictly speaking, the North Sea Fleet was a naval fleet that fought in the coastal waters. With the establishment of the Dragon Elephant Legion and the Tiger Brave Legion, the development of the territorial navy seemed to be lagging behind. There were 2 reasons for this. One was that the construction of the fortress ships required a period of time, and the other was the lack of naval generals. If the construction of the fortress ships could be solved with time, then the lack of naval generals was somewhat fatal and almost unsolvable. The current commander of the Navy, Pei Donglai, was only a mid-level general. Whether it was experience or knowledge, it was really difficult for him to carry the flag of the Navy. If they really forced him to do something beyond his capabilities, he would only be crushed by Pei Donglai. Previously, when Ouyang Shuo was inspecting North Sea City, Pei Donglai had made a few suggestions on the development of the Navy, which greatly touched Ouyang Shuo. During this period, Ouyang Shuo had taken the time to study some naval classics from the Ming and Qing dynasties. He had gradually developed a clearer idea about the construction of the territory's navy. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo specially summoned Du Ruhui and Pei Donglai to discuss the construction of the territory's navy. The three of them discussed in Ouyang Shuo's study for a whole day before deciding on the development plan of the territory's navy. At the same time, they made a fundamental change in the Navy's current structure. According to the plan, the territory's Navy would be divided into 4 levels: Navy, Fleet, Formation, and Navy Battalion. The Navy was equivalent to an army, the Fleet was equivalent to an army, and the Formation was equivalent to a division. The Nanyang Navy would be established to be responsible for the entire Southern Ocean's maritime operations. There would be a commander of the Navy, with the rank of admiral. Under the Nanyang Navy, there would be a number of fleets based on the specific situation. The North Sea Fleet would be officially renamed the North Sea Bay Fleet, mainly responsible for the North Sea Bay's maritime operations. There would be a commander of the Navy. The North Sea Bay Fleet would belong to the Nanyang Navy. At the same time, they would also plan to establish the Cliff Mountain Fleet in Cliff Province. Different from the North Sea Bay Fleet, the future Cliff Mountain Fleet would mainly be responsible for the Southern Ocean's maritime operations. The North Sea Bay Fleet and the Cliff Mountain Fleet would be the 2 main fleets of the Nanyang Navy. The North Sea Bay Fleet would have 4 formations. The current North Sea Fleet would be reorganized into the North Sea Bay Fleet's first formation. There would be a commander of the Navy. The first formation would be divided into several Navy battalions, each with a battalion commander. The biggest difference between the Navy and the Army was that the Navy would be reduced to 1 brigade. Pei Donglai's position would also be officially established as the commander of the Nanyang Navy's North Sea Bay Fleet's first formation. The commander of the Navy and the commander of the Navy would be temporarily vacant. At the same time, a general plan was made for the fleet's warship structure. The most basic structure would be a Navy battalion, with at least 1 tower ship as the flagship, for Liao fighting ships as the main warships, and 12 Scarlet horseboats as reconnaissance warships. Apart from the Scarlet horseboats, each warship would have a captain, a first officer, a second officer, and a third officer. Because the Scarlet horseboats were small, they were only responsible for reconnaissance and would only have 1 captain. At this point, the Shanghai City Navy could be considered to be on the right track. To be continued. Chapter 370. Completing the transformation of the Nanyang Navy's North Bay Fleet First Formation was only the first step in the Navy's transformation. The next step was to find a Navy general. China's ancient top 10 Navy generals included Zhou Yu of the Three Kingdoms period, Liu Rengu of the Tang Dynasty, Li Baohe and Zhang Hongfan of the Southern Song Dynasty, Yu Tonghai of the late Yuan Dynasty, Zheng He, Deng Zilong, Yu Daiyou, and Zheng Qinggong of the Ming Dynasty, and finally Shi Lang of the Qing Dynasty. By the end of the Qing Dynasty, Deng Shichong had already developed ironclad warships. Among the generals, the earliest Zhou Yu was a figure from the Three Kingdoms period. After the Battle of Chongping, the next was the Battle of Giant Deer. After the Battle of Giant Deer, the Qing Dynasty just barely joined the history of the wilderness. There was still the Western Han Dynasty in between the Three Kingdoms. Thus, it was basically impossible for Ouyang Shuo to obtain any of them through normal methods. The only way was through the recruitment center or the summoning talisman. The recruitment center still had to wait for a year to cool down. As for the summoning talisman, not to mention that it was extremely difficult to find, even if one obtained one, how could one be so lucky as to summon a Navy general? Ouyang Shuo was really at his wit's end. Ouyang Shuo's strategy to build a powerful navy had a long way to go. What he could do was to actively prepare all kinds of warships, especially fortress ships. At the same time, he ordered Pei Donglai to continuously train sailors to prepare for the future expansion of the navy. The problem was if the large-scale reserve of warships and sailors was not used for a long time, it would cause a waste of resources. It was not advisable. Thus, what Ouyang Shuo could really do was really limited. He could only take it one step at a time. March 28th, Black Snake found Ouyang Shuo and reported the results of a month's work. After a month of careful preparation, the Black Snake Guard's various intelligence stations in the 9 capital cities had officially begun operations. The Black Snake Guard had more than 370 mercenaries as the core, and with the addition of NPC intelligence personnel from the various intelligence stations, the total number of members reached more than 500. In addition, the commanders of the various intelligence stations had also spent a large sum of money to set up a large number of informants in the capital, including street vendors, beggars, prostitutes, laborers of the docks, and so on. There was nothing that could not be found. Although they were inconspicuous, they could bring a lot of information to the Black Snake Guards. The next goal of the Black Snake Guards was to take down the maids and servants of the nobles, as well as the 2 hardbones of the gangs in the capital. This way, the Black Snake Guards basically established a complete intelligence network in the capital city. Of course, due to limited time, funds, and manpower, whether it was the spies that had already been planted or the targets that were prepared to act, they were all ordinary people. The real high-level spies still needed to be slowly infiltrated. Some of the spies had low statuses when they were first placed, so they were basically unable to obtain any important information. This required the cooperation of the Black Snake Guards to help them gradually rise. For example, a chosen beggar would be groomed to become the head of a certain area. A woman from a brothel wanted to make her a star. A coolie who helped him get a foothold on the dock. Wait. All in all, cultivating spies was a complicated and long-term job that could not be rushed. Only then would the spies, nurtured step by step, be truly loyal and reliable. They would also be the most precious resources of the Black Snake Guards in the future. As for the players, they were mainly concentrated in the 2 major areas of the guild and the territory. Needless to say, the guilds had planted spies in the various large guilds through either bribery or membership. They did not expect them to find out any important information. Just a general understanding of the movements would be enough. Similarly, if they could help these spies improve their status in the guild, their value would be even greater. If they could break into the core leadership of the guild, it would be a true success. Unlike NPCs, there were hidden dangers in the loyalty of players. Therefore, some of the core guilds would be personally dispatched by the Snake Guards to join them and play a core role. Basically, the top 10 guilds of the major cities had Snake Guards mixed in. Even cooperative guilds like the Snow Death Rose Mercenary Group, the Breeze Pavilion, and the Rain Listening Tower were no exception. For the territory, they would secretly set up a contact point. The person in charge of the contact point would then weave an intelligence network in the territory. Because of the special nature of the territory, it was decided that it was best to choose an NPC as the person in charge of the contact point. If it was a player, it would easily arouse the suspicion of a lord. Therefore, the Black Snake Guards were conducting special training for the NPC intelligence personnel of the various intelligence stations, striving to train a group of elite spies and secret agents, especially a group of intelligence talents who could take charge of an area. Because they were still in special training, the infiltration of the territory had not begun. Finally, the spies planted by the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group were also absorbed by the Black Snake Guards to supplement them. At this point, the intelligence network built by the Black Snake Guards finally surfaced. After Ouyang Shuo heard it, he was a little dumbfounded. If it could really be implemented according to the Black Snake's plan, it would be amazing. In the future China region, no matter if it was the capital, guilds, or territories, any movement in the wind would not be able to escape Ouyang Shuo's eyes. Of course, a plan was a plan. To actually implement it, the difficulty was also huge. Even with a large group of professionals and Ouyang Shuo's strong financial support, to lay out such an intelligence network, even the most basic framework would need at least more than a year. Seeing this, Ouyang Shuo allocated another 20,000 gold coins from the funds previously withheld to Black Snake. Black Snake was naturally very excited about Ouyang Shua's strong support. What he was doing now was much more exciting compared to the small-scale activities of the Rattlesnake mercenary group. Black Snake felt that the blood in his body that had cooled down began to boil again. Ouyang Shua supported the construction of the Black Snake Guards because he sensed some kind of danger from the Black Snake's narration. Since the Black Snake Guards could build such an intelligence network, then what about the big forces like Dichun? Perhaps a territory was just the tip of the iceberg floating on the sea surface for the big forces. The big forces might not be able to compare to Ouyang Shua in terms of judging the direction of the game and management of territories. But in other aspects, they were miles ahead of Ouyang Shua. Building an intelligence network was naturally what the big forces should do. They were too careless. The Battle of Lian Province and the defection of the 3 territories was a sign. Dichun's intelligence network had actually penetrated into the Lian Province basin. But Ouyang Shua did not know. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua could not help but tremble. He told his deduction to the Black Snake. After listening, the Black Snake was silent for a while. After a long time, the Black Snake said in a deep voice, "Marquis, don't worry. I will personally preside over the investigation of Lian Province. Within 2 months, we must find out all the spies that the big forces have planted in the Lian Province basin." The Black Snake said to find out, but not to remove them. After listening, Ouyang Shua also nodded in agreement. Some spies, as long as they kept a close eye on them, they did not necessarily have to be removed. Perhaps they could have unexpected effects. "Then I'll leave it to you." The Black Snake nodded and did not speak. In addition to building an intelligence network, the Black Snake Guards also found some interesting information. What Ouyang Shua was most concerned about was the progress between the Star Alliance and the Thread of Love. The rumor about the Star Sage dust and the Thread of Love is purely false. The Black Snake first clarified the gossip and then said, "On the other hand, the Thread of Love has really been forced to the edge of the cliff by the Star Alliance. It seems that it's time for us to take action." Ouyang Shua smiled faintly, appearing to have a card up his sleeve. When the Black Snake heard this, he looked at Ouyang Shua in surprise. He could not understand what kind of trump card Ouyang Shua had that made him so confident that he could snatch food from the Star Alliance. Although the Star Alliance had just been established, they had the strong support of the crisscrossing sword aura in the capital and Handan County outside. It wasn't an easy task to shake them. Not to mention others, the power of the Star Sage Dust family was not to be underestimated. Since the secret family had decided to come out, they would naturally do their best. If Ouyang Shua wanted to slap the Star Alliance in the face, he would have to pay the price. Ouyang Shua naturally would not explain anything to the Black Snake. That afternoon, he brought 4 personal guards and teleported to the capital and stayed in the Shanghai city office in the capital. The commander of the Black Snake Guards in the capital was the White Snake. The capital was the most important of the 9 king cities, and the White Snake was also one of the best among the 9 commanders. The White Snake reported the specific information to Ouyang Shua in detail. It was reported that under the pressure of the Star Alliance, the Thread of Love had almost fallen into chaos. The entire guild was basically unable to purchase rare materials, and the members were already beginning to be dissatisfied. Under the pressure of the Star Alliance, the attitude of the Thread of Love, the leader of the Thread of Love, had already changed and started to loosen. Perhaps the surrender was just around the corner. When Ouyang Shua heard this, he said faintly, "Help me arrange a meeting with the Thread of Love tomorrow." "No problem." The Black Snake Guards had been stationed in the capital for a month, and there was still a way to get in touch with the Thread of Love. As a professional intelligence officer, the White Snake would not ask about the reason and purpose of Ouyang Shua's actions. To him, he only needed to carry out the orders. After the Black Snake left, Ouyang Shua stayed in the room alone, planning the meeting tomorrow. To be continued. Chapter 371. P.S. If you have a recommendation vote, please vote for me. Sheng Xiao, thanks. D. On the 29th of March, Ouyang Shua made an appointment with Love Thread. The meeting place was a tea house in the capital called First Grade Fragrance. Ouyang Shuo arrived at first-grade fragrance half an hour earlier and chose a private room on the second floor, where he could enjoy the scenery along the street outside the window and ensure his privacy. Love Thread was a cold woman. When she came in, Ouyang Shuo was brewing tea. Lord Wui, I've heard of you for a long time. Sect leader Qing's name is also famous. Ouyang Shuo smiled and personally poured a cup of hot tea for Love Thread. Golden Thread Imperial Chrysanthemum Tea, please. Love Thread picked up the teacup and took a sip elegantly. Her eyes lit up and she said, I didn't expect Lord Wui to be proficient in the way of tea. There was nothing more suitable than drinking flower tea in spring. Love Thread was the leader of a thread. She could be said to be the master of miscellaneous arts. She was proficient in the way of wine, the way of tea, and gourmet food. The love link in life was an exceptionally exquisite woman. Not only was she exquisite, but her taste in life was also exquisite. It wasn't easy for Ouyang Shuo's tea to be praised by her. In his previous life, Ouyang Shuo didn't like to drink wine, but he loved tea. He was infatuated with love and had some experience in the way of tea. Leader Qing is very refined. I'm sorry for showing off in front of an expert. Love Thread glanced at Ouyang Shuo indifferently. She couldn't hide the tiredness in her expression. She didn't want to beat around the bush and said directly, Lord Wui, you didn't invite me here just to drink tea, did you? To be honest, if it wasn't for Ouyang Shuo, Love Thread wouldn't have come here. Right now, she was really in trouble and was in a sorry state. She really wasn't in the mood to keep the appointment. Ouyang Shuo smiled. Leader Qing should be able to guess why I'm here. Oh, you're also interested in a thread? As she spoke, Love Thread already showed her coldness. The atmosphere was no longer as harmonious as it was at the beginning. Recently, she had already been annoyed by similar strong people. Seeing that Ouyang Shuo was no exception, the little good impression she had at the beginning had already disappeared. Ouyang Shuo didn't mind and said, why don't you listen to my solution? When he thought about how the other party was the #1 player in the game, he suppressed the displeasure in his heart. Recently, she'd been pestered by the dust of Constellation to the point of being helpless, and she'd aroused the intention to retire. He had only met Ouyang Shuo because he was just holding on to the slightest bit of hope. The Love Silk Knot said indifferently, I'm all ears. Has sect leader Qing heard of the Cliff Prefecture? Cliff State. The Love Thread Knot was confused. Players, especially adventurers, were not very sensitive to the map of the China server. Ouyang Shuo changed the topic. What about Jingzhou Island? Jingzhou Island? The Love Thread button was shocked. As one of the 2 largest islands in the China region, the name of Jingzhou Island was well known among the players. Seeing the reaction of the Silk of Love, Ouyang Shuo nodded. Not bad. He was satisfied with the secrecy of the 3 elite groups. So far, the fact that news about the Cliff State had not spread among adventure-type players was proof of this. Seeing that the Silk Knot of Love was puzzled, Ouyang Shuo briefly explained the situation of the Cliff Province. After listening, the Love Thread button did not speak for a long time. As the leader of a gang, the Love Thread was naturally not stupid. From Ouyang Shuo's simple description, she had vaguely realized that the Cliff State was a blessed land for skilled people. Lord Wui, aren't you worried that I'll leak the news? Ouyang Shuo smiled confidently. I believe in your character, and I believe in my own eyes even more. What a confident person. Can you elaborate a little more? The Love Thread button realized that perhaps the turning point that she had been looking forward to was right in front of her. Of course. Ouyang Shuo nodded. The Silk of Love moved its headquarters to Cliff Mountain City and accepted its protection. Outside Cliff Mountain City, there is a large piece of land that can be used by all kinds of people with production skills. Within Cliff Mountain City, there are many things waiting to be done. It is a good place for craftsmen to show their skills. What about the rare materials? How do we solve it? The Love Thread button was not satisfied. The main reason why the Silk of Love was in such a predicament today was that the rare materials were controlled by other guilds. In the future, the Cliff Mountain City will absorb a large number of adventure-type players, and, at the same time, it it will not accept the entry of guilds. The Five Fingers Mountain is rich in resources, and I believe that the Silk of Love will be able to cooperate happily with this group of adventure-type players. The Love Thread Button's eyes lit up. Seeing that the Love Thread knot was already somewhat moved, Ouyang Shua threw out the last strong medicine and said, "The Snow Rose Mercenary Group, Cool Breeze Pavilion, and Listen to the Rain Tower have already formed an alliance. I still have some influence on these three guilds. Even if the Silk of Love can't buy enough rare materials from the adventure-type players, I can also help the Silk of Love solve it." The Love Thread Button heard this and was shocked again. "I have to say, Lord Wooey, you almost convinced me." But the Love Thread Button wanted to say something, but stopped. Ouyang Shua frowned. The Love Thread Button's reaction was somewhat out of his expectations. Logically speaking, compared to the merger model proposed by the Sword Energy Crisscrossing or the Star Alliance, his proposal had much less restrictions on the Silk of Love. Basically, both parties had a relationship of equal cooperation. Ouyang Shua couldn't think of a reason for the Love Thread Button to refuse. "If Leader Qing has any concerns or requests, you might as well say it. Please don't doubt my sincerity." "I naturally don't doubt Lord Wooey's sincerity." The Love Thread Button sighed in her heart. She also felt that it was a pity that she had missed such an opportunity. She changed the topic and said, "Do you know the identity of Star Zhichun?" Ouyang Shua suddenly realized that she was worried about this. For ordinary players, the mysterious hidden family still had a very strong deterrent force, and they didn't dare to offend them easily. In his previous life, Ouyang Shua was also like this. He had always kept a respectful distance from these big forces. This world was already very different. Different experiences had created Ouyang Shua's extraordinary courage. He said lightly, "A hidden family is not enough to make me afraid. If Leader Qing is only worried about this, you don't have to do this." "What? You actually know his identity?" The Love Thread Button was shocked when she heard this, and her pair of beautiful eyes looked at Ouyang Shua inquiringly. This man was really unfathomable. Ouyang Shua nodded and said, "Leader Qing, don't worry. Shanghai City will help you deal with the grudge between Star Alliance and Crisscrossing Sword Chi. We won't make things difficult for you. With Lord Wooey's promise, I can rest assured." Ouyang Shua's promise completely eliminated the Love Thread Button's worries. In less than half an hour of meeting, the man in front of her had already completely convinced her. Inexplicably, the Love Thread Button's confidence in Ouyang Shua doubled. Ouyang Shua laughed heartily and took the initiative to extend his hand. He said, "It's a pleasure working with you. It's a pleasure working with you." The two giants had officially reached an intention to work together. Next was to discuss the specific details of the cooperation. Thread Button was one of the top 10 guilds. Other than the main guild, there were also 10 branch guilds. All of them were large guilds with a total of 110,000 members. Compared to the other top 10 guilds, Thread Button had the least number of members. The guild with the most members was Baleful Blood Mercenary Corps, which was ranked first with a total of 300,000 members. Basically, the top 10 guilds had around 200,000 members. Due to the recent changes, many people had already left the guilds, mainly from the branch guilds. Therefore, Thread Button, its current members were around 100,000. Ouyang Shua wasn't completely at ease with this group of people. Among them, there was definitely a mix of good and bad people. Ouyang Shua's intention was to use this opportunity to carry out a cleansing of the guild. The Love Thread Button didn't raise any objections to Ouyang Shua's suggestion. In fact, the main reason why the Love Thread Button was disheartened by the large number of members leaving the guild. She didn't expect that the guild that she had painstakingly built would actually be unable to withstand the test. At the same time, Ouyang Shua also promised that after the headquarters moved, Thread Button would enjoy a series of preferential policies in Cliff Mountain City. For example, the first year's rent would be halved, taxes would be halved, and other benefits. At the same time, the Four Seas Bank's branch in Cliff Mountain City would also provide loan services for Thread Button, its members to open shops or operate farms. As for the other details, both parties would have to discuss in detail. After the discussion was done, The two of them left. The love thread button had to mobilize the members to move, while Ouyang Shua had other things to do. The two of them agreed that the day after tomorrow, which was the 1st of April, Thread Button would move as a whole. This news definitely couldn't be hidden from the Star Alliance. Ouyang Shua couldn't predict what would happen the day after tomorrow. The only thing he could do was to prepare for a rainy day. With Ouyang Shua's personality, he had never been afraid of guessing people's hearts with the greatest evil. The love thread button returned to the guild headquarters and immediately released a message through the guild channel. Everyone, I am the love thread button. As soon as the love thread button appeared, the guild channel became silent and the screen was instantly cleared. During this period of time, Thread Button was in the midst of a storm. And regarding this, the love thread button hadn't expressed her position. Within the guild, everyone was panicking. Now that the love thread button stood out, it was obvious that there was going to be a conclusion. All the members had different thoughts. Some were disappointed, and some were excited. They were about to face the judgment of fate. The eyes that this Star Alliance had placed in Thread Button were inexplicably excited. In their opinion, their master must have successfully taken down the love thread button. Thinking of this, these eyes didn't wait for the love thread button to finish speaking and pass this information to their superiors, hoping to get the first credit. In less than 10 minutes, the Star Alliance's master, the Dust of Star, would receive the news. The eyes were secretly excited. They thought that with this credit, they would definitely be able to get an official position in the Star Alliance. The identity of the Star Alliance's master, the Dust of Star, was no longer a secret within the guild. Because of this, the members of the Star Alliance felt that the guild had potential and a bright future. Every one of them seemed to be on steroids and worked very hard. If they could get the Dust of Star's recognition, wouldn't they be able to reach the heavens in a single step? To be continued. Chapter 372. P.S. 3,800-word chapter, rolling on the ground, asking for recommendation votes. The eyes that the Star Alliance had placed in a thread didn't stay excited for long. Love Thread then announced a piece of news in the guild channel. In view of the current situation of the guild, I have decided to allow members to freely leave the guild, become loners, or join other guilds. Everything is free, and the guild will no longer interfere. As soon as Love Thread's voice fell, the guild channel was already in an uproar. The 110,000 guild members were gradually divided into two factions. One of them was the doer. After listening to Love Thread's words, they chose to leave the guild without saying a word. Since the leader had admitted defeat, what were they still doing in the guild? There was no future in staying. Instead of that, it was better to part on good terms. As skilled talents, the members of a thread did not have to worry about not being able to find another guild. Of course, there were also some members who were tired of the deceit of the guild and chose to be loners, running a shop in the royal city, making money while improving their skills. It was also a good choice. The other faction was the loyal faction. They spoke in the guild channel to persuade Love Thread to stay. Leader, we can't leave a thread. Yes, a thread is our home. We don't want to leave. Leader, a thread was built by us with hard work. We can't disband. Leader, come out and say something. A thread disbanded. What should we do? Some members fell into a state of panic and helplessness, like wolf cubs abandoned by their mother. Love Thread's mood at this moment was also unusually complicated. On one hand, there was a burst of members proposing to leave the guild in her ears. In less than 2 minutes, thousands of people had left the guild, and it was getting more and more intense. On the other hand, there was the bitter pleading of the members. The members' persuasion to stay let Love Thread know that there were still loyal people in the guild, and they still had feelings for the guild. Even so, Love Thread had to harden her heart and continue this cruel test. Love Thread spoke again in the guild channel. A thread will not disband, but will never be merged by any guild. Even so, if you still want to stay, I have nothing to say. As soon as he said that, some of the so-called loyal members began to waver. After this upheaval, a thread's fall from the top 10 guilds was basically a done deal. If they didn't accept the merger, it was easy to imagine the guild's future. Because of this, the players who still had a glimmer of hope chose to leave the guild. The wave of withdrawing from the guild was getting more and more intense. It started from the outer members, to the elite members, and finally to the core members. Seeing this, a trace of sorrow flashed through the knot of Love's eyes. In particular, the withdrawal of the core members was the biggest blow to her. These people were her brothers and sisters who had fought alongside her for many years and had played several games together. Who would have thought that they would still choose to leave at such a crucial moment? The benefits involved in Earth on Lu were too great. The purpose of players playing the game was no longer simple. There were too many entanglements of interests, and the loyalty of the players was naturally a huge test. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. The love thread link suddenly felt a sense of relief. Hopefully, after this turmoil, a thread could be reborn in Cliff State. In just one afternoon, the number of a thread members who had left the guild had reached more than 40,000, almost halved. Some of those who had not yet left the guild were not all loyal members. They were just exchanging for the guild's resources. Before leaving the guild, the members would basically spend all of their guild points. For a time, in the guild warehouse of a thread, all kinds of materials that had been piled up like a mountain began to disappear at a speed visible to the naked eye. As the leader of the guild, the knot of love could prohibit members from exchanging, but she did not do so. After all, the points of the members were saved by them. Even if they wanted to leave the guild, they still had the right to exchange for them. The next plot was completely beyond the expectations of the eyes. Their excited expressions suddenly froze. They could only smile bitterly while passing on the latest information to their superiors. Learning that a large number of Thread members had left the guilds in the capital were in an uproar. Originally, with the joint intervention of Sword Energy and Star Alliance, the other guilds had already given up on the idea. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Since a Thread refused to be merged, the members who had left the guild would no longer belong to any guild. How many people they could rope, independent on their own abilities? The major guilds were dispatched one after another, working hard to rope in the members of a Thread who had left the guild. In the beginning, they still went to contact them one by one. Later on, the major guilds simply set up recruitment points at the entrance of the headquarters of a Thread. As soon as the members of a Thread left the guild, packed their luggage, and walked out of the guild station, they were stopped by a group of personnel managers of the guild and invited them to join the guild. The scene was extremely lively. Some guilds even fought each other on the streets, exchanging punches and kicks for the sake of competing for members. PK was prohibited in the capital. Otherwise, once they were caught by the constables of 6 Doors, they would be imprisoned. They were not Bloodshed, who could run away by himself. These guilds were all registered in the capital, and 6 Doors could catch them easily. Therefore, they could only fight a war of words. At most, they would fight with fists and feet. Even if the constables of 6 Doors arrived, as long as it was not a fight, it could be explained as a warm-up exercise. Not only the headquarters of a Thread, but the residences of the 10 major branches were also the same. Surrounding the entrance of the headquarters were all big guilds. Surrounding the residences of the branches were a mix of large and medium-sized guilds. As for the small guilds, their temples were too small, and the members of a Thread would never consider joining them. Among them, there was even a figure of crisscrossing sword aura. Since Star Alliance could not take down a Thread, one sword from the west naturally did not have to worry about anything. He quietly made a fortune and instructed the guild personnel manager to start recruiting a large number of a Thread members. Such a lively scene even alarmed the other royal cities. Baleful Blood Mercenary Corps, 18 Steeds of Swallow and Cloud, Flowing Light Pavilion, and other guilds heard the news and came one after another, sending people directly to the capital to recruit people. Such a scene was really like a gluttonous banquet. A Thread, which was once one of the top 10 guilds, was the only main dish at the banquet. In the banquet, the most annoyed person was none other than Dust of Stars. When he received the first piece of information, Dust of Stars was still proud of himself. He was proud that he had achieved a complete victory in his first battle. In this way, it was a strong counterattack to the opposition of his family. When he received the information from the next day, Dust of Stars did not feel good in his heart. Suddenly, he fell from the clouds to the abyss. Dust of Stars was so angry that he cursed. B*TCH. You'd rather disband yourself than submit to me. Dust of Stars completely bore a grudge against the instigator of the love thread. Since when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Dust of Stars was so angry that he was about to lose his mind. He was about to arrange for people to take revenge on a thread. Fortunately, there were still capable people in the Star Alliance. At the critical moment, the military advisor of the Star Alliance stood up and said, "Alliance Master, there will be opportunities in the future to concoct the love thread. The most important thing now is to try to rope in the members of a thread." When Dust of Stars heard this, his anger temporarily dissipated. He patted the shoulder of the military advisor and said approvingly, "Not bad. Your reminder is right. I'll leave this matter to you." "Thank you, Alliance Master." The military advisor turned around and retreated, beginning to join the feast. This gluttonous feast lasted until the afternoon of the next day before it came to an end. As of 4:00 p.m. on March 30th, a thread, which had 110,000 members, was left with less than 10,000 members who were willing to follow the love thread and continue to run the guild. Faced with such a scene, the love thread was truly heartbroken. When she promised Ouyang Shua to conduct a test on the guild, the love thread could predict that a large number of members would leave the guild. However, she completely did not expect that more than 90% of the members would leave the guild. The love thread could not help but wonder if she was a failure as a leader. Up until now, those who could stay in a thread were all die-hard members of the guild. Even those eyes had basically completely retreated. Only the Star Alliance still had an eye in a thread. Needless to say, the reason was that Dust of Stars harbored hatred in his heart and was ready to take revenge on the love thread at any time. During this feast, the Star Alliance recruited less than 3,000 members. On the contrary, the unstoppable Sword Aura recruited nearly 10,000 members, which was enough to establish a pure professional guild branch. All the guilds in the capital, big and small, had a share. The top 10 guilds in the capital also reaped a lot of benefits. The Baleful Blood Mercenary Group alone recruited more than 5,000 members, which was more than the Star Alliance, the local tyrant. The influence of the Star Alliance was obviously not as great as Dust of Stars had imagined. How could Dust of Stars not be angry at the huge difference between 3,000 and 110,000? He had already decided to take revenge on a thread and make it impossible for him to establish a foothold in the capital. The 3 guilds of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas also joined the feast. When Ouyang Shua received the news, he did not say anything. He was the leader of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas, but he would not easily interfere with the internal decisions of the members, which was a great taboo. At 5:00 p.m., the love thread did a rough calculation. Among the 10,000 members, there were about 3,000 left in the main guild, which was the lowest number of people who left the guild. After receiving the calculation results, the love thread finally felt a little gratified. At least the main guild that she had painstakingly built was basically trustworthy. Among the hundreds of core members, at least half of them stayed. The top 10 branches were a little miserable. The largest one only had 1,000 members left, and most of them had dropped below 1,000. 1 or 2 newly established branches were almost all gone, and only a few people were left. Helpless, the love thread could only gather all the members in the main guild. As for the top 10 branches, they were just empty shells. The love thread sorted out her emotions and began to speak in the guild channel. "Everyone, I'm the love thread!" The same words sounded in the guild channel, but the meaning was very different. The upheaval that the guild had experienced made the 10,000 die-hard members panic. This was a thread's weakest moment, and it was also strongest moment. The members who stayed became incomparably united. Only by being united could they get through this cold winter. A friend in need is a friend indeed. At the critical moment, I saw everyone's loyalty which moved me. Now, I want to announce that the headquarters of a thread will be moved to Cliff Mountain City. Cliff Mountain City? Cliff Mountain City is a city built on Jingzhou Island by the #1 Lord of China, who has no clothes. That place will be the nirvana of a thread. If you don't want to leave the capital, you can still leave now. I won't force you. The love thread didn't explain too much about Cliff Mountain City. Even so, the golden signboard of who has no clothes still let the members see a trace of sunshine in the cold winter. Hearing this, only a few members, because they didn't want to leave the capital, chose to leave the guild. For these members, the love thread prepared a generous severance package for them. After all, they had withstood the test and deserved to be rewarded. The materials in the guild warehouse were only a small part of thread's assets. After all, those materials were some ordinary materials, and the rare materials had long been put away by the love thread. The really valuable assets of a thread were the various industries that the guild had purchased in the capital, including hundreds of workshops and 50 to 60 shops. Some of the shops were even in the prosperous areas of the capital. These properties were all accumulated by a thread through hard work over the past year, living frugally and living frugally. The purpose was to provide a platform for the members to hone their skills, and it was also the guild's main source of income. The finished products processed by the members were all sold through the shops. These precious industries were sold out by the love thread in one day. The only thing that was preserved was the headquarters courtyard. First, the love thread wanted to keep it as a memento. Second, they left an industry in the capital, so that in the future, when the members of a thread returned to the capital to work, they would also have a place to stay. Even the empty shells of the 10 branches were resold by the love thread to other guilds. In total, the love thread had collected a total of 160,000 gold coins. This capital was the capital for a thread to make a comeback in Cliff Mountain City. To be continued. Chapter 373. After learning that a thread was going to move to Cliff Mountain City, the Dust of Star was flustered and exasperated. It was only at this moment that he realized that all of this was caused by Shi Wui. Bitch, I won't let you get away with this. The Dust of Star gritted his teeth, and a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes. Someone come. Alliance Master. The military advisor walked in. The failure to recruit a thread members made him very nervous, and he was afraid that the Alliance Master would blame him. It was not that he was not attentive, but the appeal of the Star Alliance was too weak. Although the Dust of Star was angry, he was still rational. As a member of an aristocratic family, he still had basic self-restraint. He called the military advisor over because he had another task for him. After hearing this, the military advisor was a little surprised. After thinking about it, he still held back what he was about to say. The Alliance Master was angry, and persuading him at this time was tantamount to asking for trouble. Strategists planned for themselves first, and most of them were proficient in protecting themselves. However, the Dust of Stars saw the military advisor's strange expression and said indifferently, "If you have any thoughts, say it." The military advisor's face turned bitter when he heard this. At this time, he had to say it even if he didn't want to. The military advisor organized his words and said tactfully, "Alliance Master, this matter has no benefits for the Star Alliance. Instead, it will create a great enemy for no reason. Isn't that a little too much?" The Dust of Star shook his head and said, "You're wrong. Shi Wui is the Yin Huang Alliance's mortal enemy, which is also our enemy. How can we talk about creating enmity for no reason? Star Alliance has just joined the Yin Huang Alliance, and it's time for us to perform well. If we can make Shi Wui lose face tomorrow, won't we be able to improve Star Alliance's position in the Alliance?" When a military advisor heard this, although he instinctively felt that it was a little inappropriate, he could not find any words to refute. All right, that's the arrangement. However, the Dust of Stars' patience was exhausted. He waved his hand and signaled for the military advisor to leave. Yes, the military advisor left and arranged according to the Dust of Stars' request. April 1st, Kyoto. After the members of a thread finished packing, they officially bid farewell to the headquarters in Kyoto and walked majestically towards the only teleportation portal in Kyoto. Only then did the guilds in Kyoto receive the news that a thread was actually leaving Kyoto. Seeing this, the players could not help but sigh. In just 2 days, one of the top 10 guilds in China had vanished into thin air. The vicissitudes of the world are truly unfathomable by ordinary people. Along the way, there were players pointing at the team. Where is a thread moving to? Who knows? He must want to leave this sad place. Sigh, the role model and spiritual leader of us lifestyle players is gone just like that. Dare I ask, will there still be a day for us life players to make a name for ourselves? A tailor let out a long sigh in the middle of the street, drawing waves of sympathy. The weak are prey to the strong. What else can we do? There were even some members of a thread who had left the guild. Their new guild emblem hung on their chests, and when they saw their former colleagues, they had complicated expressions on their faces. There were those who felt sorry for him, and there were also those who mocked and took pleasure in his misfortune. These players who didn't leave were naturally the greatest mockery towards those who had left the guild. Most of them couldn't wait for one thread to disband. The complexity and viciousness of the human heart was evident. Love Thread walked at the front of the team, expressionless as she faced the finger-pointing of the passers-by. She only secretly swore in her heart, "Jingdu, I will return in an even more glorious manner." The other members were not as calm as Love Thread. It was really not a pleasant thing to be judged like this on the street, and some people's faces were already flushed. They only hoped that they could go a little faster on this path of refining the heart. The teleportation array in Jingdu was located in the largest square in the capital and occupied a very large area. Compared to the teleportation array in the territory, the teleportation array in the capital was much busier, and there were people going in and out at all times. At this moment, the square seemed a little unusual. 20,000 members of the Star Alliance formed circles and surrounded the transmission array so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Dust of Stars stood at the outermost periphery, quietly waiting for a thread to arrive. In the tea house on the east side of the square, Ouyang Shuo and 4 guards silently watched the square, expressionlessly watching Dust of Stars' performance. Ouyang Shuo was not surprised at all that Dust of Star had come forward to disrupt the situation. What made him speechless was that Dust of Star had actually used such a rogue method. Yes, it was a rogue. Jingdu did not allow PK, but it did not prohibit players from standing. In theory, it was not against the law for the members of the Star Alliance to surround the teleportation array. In this way, a thread could not teleport away, which was a big slap to the face. It was not only a slap to the face of Love Thread, but also Ouyang Shuo's face. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo took out an item, handed it to the guard beside him, and whispered to him. The guard nodded, quietly left the tea house, and disappeared. In the past 2 days, Ouyang Shuo did not do nothing. When the members of a thread rushed to the square and saw the formation in front of them, they could not help but be dumbfounded. Dust of Star, what do you mean by this? Love Thread stared coldly at Dust of Star with an angry expression. She originally had some fear for this young master of an aristocratic family, but at this moment, seeing that he had actually done such a disgraceful thing, the trace of fear in her heart completely dissipated, leaving only full of contempt. Nothing. Dust of Star was proud in his heart, but on the surface, he pretended to be innocent. Don't you think it's too much? Love Thread angrily rebuked. Too much. Dust of Star suddenly exploded, as if his tail had been stepped on. His expression changed dramatically, and he said loudly, "Be asterisk T-Sich. You still have the face to say the word too much to me? You clearly promised me, but you turned to the embrace of no clothes. If I don't kill you, it will be difficult to dispel the hatred in my heart." You. Love Thread's face turned cold, and for a moment, she was so angry that she could not speak. Since she was a child, she had never been humiliated like this. At this moment, the square was already a sea of people. The players clearly heard the conversation between the two. Hearing this, there was an instant uproar. Love Thread was, after all, one of the 4 female adventurers, but at this moment, she was humiliated like this. When a tiger fell to the plains, it would be bullied by dogs. This is too much. That's right. Fortunately, he did not join the Star Alliance. I didn't expect that their *T Alliance Master would be so ungentlemanly. He's really trash. These heroes who were fighting for justice only dared to complain in a low voice. In the vast square, no one dared to stand up. Seeing this, Dust of Star became more and more complacent. As the successor of a secret aristocratic family, Dust of Star had been asked to keep a low profile since he was born. No matter how rich, powerful he was, he could only pretend to be an ordinary person. Long-term repression had already lost his true nature and distorted his personality. Now, he enjoyed the feeling of being the focus of tens of thousands of people. He, the son of an aristocratic family, a mysterious chi cultivator, was destined to become the focus of the audience. Compared to the powerful children of Dichun, the Dust of Star had received a traditional aristocratic family education. In his heart, there was no concept of equality between men and women. Therefore, he would call her *TCH. He said it smoothly and did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. Little did he know that he had committed a big taboo. In the square, there were existences who did not dare to provoke the Star Alliance. They were silent, digesting the other information that Dust of Star had just said. No clothes. Behind the relocation of Thread by Thread was he Yuwui. This was something that the major guilds had never thought of before. How could they not be shocked that 2 forces that did not have any contact with each other suddenly joined together? They realized that Dust of Star was not only provoking the love thread, but also No Clothes, who was standing behind the love thread, the huge shadow that shrouded the China region. Just the thought of challenging that person was enough to send shivers down one's spine. Therefore, these people did not make a move. They did not think that Shanghai City would not make a move. Since that was the case, they only needed to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. They were calm, but that did not mean that the members of Thread were calm. When they saw that their gang master had been humiliated, they immediately exploded and clamored to fight with the Star Alliance. *CK kill them. Their mouths are too smelly. Trample them to death. Fortunately, the love thread was still rational and stopped its members from advancing. It was obvious what the result would be if a life profession player fought against a combat profession player who was twice the number. The love thread was waiting for a person to arrive. Seeing that the members of Thread were all angry but did not dare to rush forward, Dust of Star could not help but feel even more proud. He laughed loudly. A bunch of cowards. Go back and drink your milk hot. Cooperating with the leader, the members of the Star Alliance laughed unscrupulously. Ouyang Shua sat in the tea house and slowly took a sip of his cold tea. He said calmly, "I don't like Dust of Star." The white snake, who was sitting opposite him, felt her heart tighten when she heard this. She knew the weight of the marquee words. It was basically the same as sentencing the Star Alliance to death. The white snake looked at Dust of Star, and a trace of pity flashed in her eyes. He was still too young and arrogant. Did he really think that the hidden aristocratic families were that great in the game? It was likely that the Dust of Star still didn't know what kind of giant he was provoking. Not to mention him, even the Yin Huang Alliance behind the Star Alliance was very cautious when facing the Marquis. After many failed confrontations, some members, such as Military Kill Ripper, were even traumatized. The White Snake could not imagine what kind of confidence Dust of Star had. He only knew that what he needed to do next was to completely infiltrate the Star Alliance and pave the way for the Marquis actions. Not only that, he had to speed up his actions against the other guilds in the capital. The Star Alliance would be a whetstone to test the Black Snake Guard's intelligence station in the capital. At this moment, the guard returned and whispered into Ouyang Shua's ear. Ouyang Shua nodded and stood up, saying, "Let's go down too. We can't let our friend wait for too long." Chapter 374. Ouyang Shuo walked down the stairs and encountered a white-robed scholar. This person was handsome and refined. His eyes were smiling, making people feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Ouyang Shuo's eyes squinted. He never imagined that he would actually encounter such a peerlessly graceful figure in the tea house. Because Ouyang Shuo had important matters to attend to, he wasn't able to converse with this person, so he nodded slightly and passed by. On the square, the Star Alliance and the Thread of Hope had fallen into a deadlock. At this moment, a group of 6 Fangate constables, about 200 of them, suddenly barged in. The leader was a middle-aged constable. He wore a 5-beam crown on his head and was dressed in a dragonfish brocade robe with an embroidered spring saber at his waist. Who dares to cause trouble in the capital? The middle-aged constable was a hall master of the 6 Fan School. His position in the 6 Fan School was not low. Above him were the sect master, the deputy commander, and the grand commander. The Dust of Star's heart shuddered when he saw the 6 doors. He had a bad feeling about this. Hearing the leader's question, the Dust of Star gestured with his eyes for the military advisor beside him to step forward and answer. Although the military counselor was shocked, he was still calm. He stepped forward and bowed to the middle-aged constable. He said, "Sir, we are members of the Star Alliance. We are only gathering here today and don't dare to cause trouble." The middle-aged constable laughed coldly. How could this little trick be difficult for him? He said sternly, "Hey, how dare you? You're obviously disrupting the normal operation of the transmission array, yet you still dare to quibble. Guards, throw them all into prison." "Yes, sir." In an instant, 200 constables took out their chains at the same time and were about to arrest them. The 200 constables were fearless against 20,000 players. In the territory of the capital, there was no guild that dared to oppose 6 doors. After all, 6 doors represented the imperial court of the capital. Not to mention the hundreds of thousands of imperial guards stationed in the palace. Even the constables of the 6 Fan School in the capital numbered no less than 10,000. Among them, there was no lack of martial arts masters. It would not take much effort to take down the Star Alliance. The onlookers in the square were blinded by the sudden turn of events. What's going on? Why are people from 6 Fan School here? Did the Star Alliance offend someone? This time, they've kicked an iron plate. Hee, there's a good show to watch. What do you call this? Not only did you fail to show off, you got hit instead. I didn't expect a thread to have such a background. Not necessarily. If a thread was really that powerful, then the love knot wouldn't have gotten angry out of humiliation just now. A player retorted. "Brother, what you said makes sense. Then who is helping one thread?" As he spoke, the people around him all turned to look at him. That player's name was Great Waves Washing Sand. He could be considered to have some knowledge. Seeing that he had become the center of attention, he couldn't help but feel proud. He pretended to be calm and said, I say, are you guys stupid? Didn't you hear what the Dust of Star said just now? Think about it. In the capital, which big shot is more influential than that one? It can't be. The other players didn't believe it. No matter how powerful Wui is, can he mobilize 6 doors? In the eyes of ordinary players, 6 doors was an unreachable existence. Even the most ordinary constable was enough to be ranked among the top of the players. Great Waves Washing Sand snorted and said, "Shallow. Don't forget, that one is different from us. He is a marquis officially conferred by the Imperial Court. Mobilizing 6 doors is nothing." When the players heard this, they couldn't help but gasp in admiration. They all looked at Great Waves Washing Sand with admiration. Great Waves Washing Sand was secretly pleased, but on the surface, he looked calm and indifferent. When the players saw this, they were even more impressed. What master! Some of the clever ones went forward to add him as a friend and establish a relationship. Great Waves Washing Sand didn't refuse anyone. After that, he even pulled a group of players to a corner of the square, acting mysterious. The players guessed what kind of shocking gossip this master was going to reveal, and they all showed expectant eyes. Great Waves Washing Sand's expression was solemn. He slowly took out a worn-out armor from his storage bag and said, "Standard armor, silver quality, 1 piece for 5 medals. Brother, do you want one?" At this moment, Great waves washing sand's gaze was as sincere as it could be. Everyone was stunned. The image of the master instantly collapsed. Met the wrong person. It turned out that this guy was a profiteer. He actually sold a worn-out armor for 5 gold coins. The players shook their heads and left. Some ruthless ones deleted him on the spot. Hey, don't go. It's silver quality. This is a product of Shanghai City. It's definitely the best. Great waves washing sand's expression changed instantly, and he revealed a profiteer's smile. Don't pull me. Seeing this, the players ran even faster, disappearing without a trace. Brother, the price is negotiable. Don't go. In an instant, the group of players left without a trace. Great waves washing sand felt that he had met the wrong person. He shook his head and sighed. Suddenly, he saw that there was still one person standing in the corner. He was shocked and put on his trademark smile. Brother, do you want one? The player, on the other hand, was drooling at the sight of the armor. He said innocently, Expert, I only have 1 gold coin. Is that okay? As he spoke, he took out a gold coin and held it tightly, his eyes filled with anticipation. Obviously, this gold coin was this player's entire fortune. He treasured it very much. Great waves washing sand didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. The armor in his hands was obtained from the Snow Death Rose mercenary group. He wanted to be a middleman and earn some money. The cost of purchasing them was 1 gold coin. Seeing that he had met a rookie, the profiteer did not know why, but his heart suddenly softened, and he sold one to him. Perhaps Great Waves washing sand remembered how he was when he first entered the game. He was also this simple. Unfortunately, fate made a fool of people. A pure child had already become a profiteer. That player was overjoyed when he received the armor. He was so excited that he almost couldn't speak. Master, you're a good person. Thank you. Thank you. Looking at the pure little warrior, Great Waves washing sand could only pretend to be a master and said calmly, It's not worth much. Little brother, you still need to work hard. Yes. The little warrior nodded vigorously. What Great Waves washing sand didn't know was that his soft-heartedness today had created a game master. This was a story to be told later, so let's not talk about it for now. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, Starja quickly stood up. He walked to the middle-aged constable's side and quietly handed over a gold note. He said in a low voice, Sir, we've offended you. We'll leave now. This is a small token of our appreciation. Please accept it. Only the heavens knew how sullen Starja felt at this moment. He had lost a lot of face today. He couldn't understand why the people of 6 Doors would suddenly rush over. According to the usual practice, as long as it wasn't a major case or assassination, no matter how much trouble the players caused, the people of 6 Doors would ignore them. He didn't know what medicine they took today, but they actually meddled in other people's business. It wasn't that Starja didn't think that there was no need for clothes, but even the Marquis couldn't easily mobilize the people of 6 Doors to help. Were there few Marquis in the territory of the capital? The people of 6 Doors wouldn't let the Marquis order them to clean up after them. Just as Starja thought, 6 Doors wouldn't easily make a move, but Ouyang Shuo was different. On New Year's Day, Ouyang Shuo was assassinated in the capital, but 6 Doors couldn't find the murderer. The person in charge of this case was the middle-aged constable in front of him. Therefore, the middle-aged constable felt that he owed Ouyang Shuo. This time, when Ouyang Shuo asked for help, the middle-aged constable agreed without hesitation. That was how the following plot came about. Seeing Starja handing over a 200 gold coin note, a trace of disdain flashed in the middle-aged constable's eyes. Marquis Lian Province had rewarded him with 5,000 gold coins. Ouyang Shuo didn't spend so much money for today's matter. He mainly wanted to make a connection in the capital. In the future, the Black Snake Guards and the capital's office would be active in the capital. Strictly speaking, 200 gold coins wasn't a small amount. It was equivalent to half a year's salary of the middle-aged constable. Unfortunately, there was always a higher mountain. The middle-aged constable smiled coldly and said, Tisk, how dare you bribe me? Men, sir, take this person down and bring him to the yamen for trial. Yes, The two constables didn't say anything else and immediately used iron chains to lock up Star. Before Starja could react, he was already taken down. Until now, he still didn't understand what was going on in this world. As usual, he handed over a reward and cleared the way, but the damn constable turned his back on him. Take him away. The middle-aged constable was expressionless. Seeing that the Alliance Master had been taken down, the members of the Star Alliance could only obediently give in. The constables of the Sixth Fan School used long iron chains to lock up the members of the Star Alliance and escorted them to the Yamen of the Sixth Fan School. It was a spectacular scene. The onlookers on the square were also dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Holy sh*t, this is 2F** King Awesome. This is the rhythm of a street parade. The Star Alliance can't stay in the capital anymore. Being treated like monkeys, the members of the Star Alliance lowered their heads and wished they could drill into the ground. The people of the major forces were also nervous when they saw this scene. It was better to offend the King of Hell than the Marquis of Lien Province. The middle-aged constable didn't care. He turned around and came to the love thread buckle and said gently, "Are you Master Ching? Because of the security in the capital, please forgive me for the inconvenience caused to your gang." Usually, the middle-aged constable wouldn't be so polite. All this was to give face to the Marquis of Lien Province. Hearing this, the love thread buckle couldn't help but burst into tears. Ouyang Shuo was compensating her for the grievances and humiliation she had suffered. This kind of respect was more important than anything else. The members of the love thread buckle also held their heads high at this moment. "Thank you for your help, Your Excellency." The love thread buckle bowed. The middle-aged constable waved his hand and led the team away. He had done everything he could. It was not until the people of the Sixth Fan School escorted the members of the Star Alliance away that Ouyang Shuo showed up. Although everyone had guessed that he was behind this, Ouyang Shuo didn't want to be accused of colluding with the Sixth Fan School. Seeing Ouyang Shuo's appearance, there was a commotion in the square. In the end, Ouyang Shuo was the real protagonist of this big show. To be continued. Chapter 375. Ouyang Shuo came to the love silk buckle and said, "Take care." The love silk buckle nodded. The two had formed a tacit understanding. Anything else would be pretentious. After a simple farewell, the love silk buckle teleported to Cliff Mountain City. At this moment, Sun Xiaoya must be waiting beside the teleportation array in Cliff Mountain City. Ouyang Shuo did not teleport to Cliff Mountain City. There were still some things waiting for him to deal with in Shanghai City. He also believed that Sun Xiaoya and Bai Nanpu were enough for the time being in Cliff Mountain City. The show had come to an end. Knowledgeable players knew that the enmity between the two sides would continue. The capital was destined to not be peaceful. After sending off the love silk, Ouyang Shuo turned and walked toward the tea house next to the square. Ouyang Shuo felt that the white-robed scholar he had just met was not a simple person. He wanted to get to know him. Unfortunately, when Ouyang Shuo arrived at the tea house, he did not see the white-robed scholar. "Hey, have you seen a white-robed scholar?" Ouyang Shuo handed over a gold coin as he pulled a waiter over and asked. The waiter took the gold coin and immediately beamed. This gold coin was equivalent to 2 months of his salary. He quickly said, "There is such a person. Unfortunately, he has already left the tea house." "How long has he been gone? Which direction did he go?" "He just left not long ago. I don't know where he went." Ouyang Shuo looked disappointed, but he did not want to give up. He said to the 4 guards, he must not have gone far. "Split up and chase after him. Hurry." "Marquis, this." The guards were in a dilemma. "What?" "Marquis, if we all leave, what about you?" After the assassination in the capital, Wang Feng had transferred 8 of his most elite guard from the Imperial Guard Brigade, now known as the Yulin Guard. They worked in 2 shifts to protect Ouyang Shuo 24 hours a day. "It's okay. I will follow the Marquis." The white snake stood up. The guards wanted to say something, but Ouyang Shuo had already waved his hand, indicating that they should immediately chase after him. Ouyang Shuo took the white snake and personally chased after him to the east. Compared to Shanghai City, The capital was very prosperous. The roads were crisscrossed, and there were countless streets and alleys. It was crowded with people. Ouyang Shuo chased for half an hour, but he didn't see the figure of the white-clothed scholar. "Forget it. I won't chase him anymore." Ouyang Shuo sighed. Half an hour had passed, and there were no more clues. Damned fortune source, it really didn't give him the chance to have a fortuitous encounter. Ouyang Shuo was almost certain that the other party was a historical figure from the spring and autumn warring states period. As for the earlier Shang and Zhou dynasties, they were either living in seclusion or had already become officials. It was unlikely that they would meet again. Even the most famous Yiyin of the Shang dynasty had been subdued by a lord called Chun Hang. It was reported that Chun Hang was a local tyrant in the Jian district. After subduing Yiyin, his reputation had soared, and he had become the leader of the feudal lord alliance. He was also an extraordinary figure. Not only the Shang and Zhou dynasties, but many people from the spring and autumn and warring states periods had also become officials. Previously, it was hidden by the lord, but after the formation of the territory alliance, it was gradually revealed by the players on the forum. The existing territories basically had one or two historical figures overseeing them, be they civil officials or military generals. In this regard, Gaia was quite fair. The most shocking news was that Wu Qi had become an official in Bawang County. Xiongba, that old fox, somehow managed to convince Wu Qi. Wu Qi was on the same level as Sun Bin, maybe even more so. The white snake saw that the Marquis was dejected and said, "Marquis, I think we might be able to find some clues if we return to the tea house." With the nature of a scholar, since he has chosen tea house, it is very likely that he is a regular customer. Ouyang Shuo's eyes lit up when he heard that. He slapped his head hard. Why didn't I think of that? Let's go back to the tea house. When they returned to the tea house, the guards had also returned. As expected, they had found nothing. Ouyang Shuo was not discouraged. He found the waiter and asked, "Waiter, does the scholar in white come here often to drink tea?" The waiter knew that the other party was a marquis and did not dare to slight him. He said, "Marquis, you have asked the right person. That young master does not come every day. He only comes when there is a chess game in the tea house." Chess game? That's right. In order to attract customers, the tea house will hold 5 chess games every month. Guests can enjoy the tea while watching the game of chess, the waiter proudly introduced. Ouyang Shuo nodded. "When is the next chess game?" "In 5 days." Ouyang Shuo took out another gold coin and handed it to the waiter. He said, "In 5 days, I will come here again. Reserve a private room for me. If that young master arrives first, you can lead him to a private room, understand?" "Don't worry, Marquis. I will definitely do it." The waiter was even more excited when he received the reward. As expected of a marquis, he was generous. After leaving the tea house, Ouyang Shuo returned to the small courtyard of the office in the capital. The white snake followed and asked, "Marquis, are you going to wait in the capital, or?" Ouyang Shuo thought for a moment and said, "Just wait in the capital and deal with the matter of the Star Alliance." "Marquis, what do you mean?" To deal with the Star Alliance, he had to consider the intervention of the crisscrossing Sword Chi. Contact 1 or 2 big guilds in the capital. I think they will be interested in cooperating with us. Ouyang Shuo also wanted to get a crisscrossing Sword Chi. In the last system auction, because of the fight for the Divine Weapon 7-star Dragon Well, the crisscrossing Sword Chi and the Snow Rose mercenary group had become sworn enemies. If there was a chance, Ouyang Shuo naturally wouldn't mind teaching the crisscrossing Sword Chi a lesson. Although adventure-type players had started to rise, compared to a great lord like Ouyang Shuo, they were still not strong enough to compete with the territory. Thus, they had to find a lord to rely on. In the later stages of the game, the situation was very different. Now, Ouyang Shuo had enough confidence to deal with the crisscrossing Sword Chi. The white snake's eyes lit up when she heard this and said, "I understand. Don't worry, Marquis. There will be results in 2 days." Ouyang Shuo nodded and didn't say anything. April 3rd, the capital. In a pavilion in the courtyard, for young people sat in the host and guest seats. Ouyang Shuo sat in the host seat, and the white snake sat opposite him. In secret, The White Snake was the commander of the Black Snake Guard's intelligence station in the capital. On the surface, the White Snake was the head butler of the capital office. On Ouyang Shua's left was a cool, handsome guy with a cold face. He was the leader of the Shadow Alliance, Shadow Fox. On the right was a gentle and polite young master. He was the leader of the Dream House, Devouring Clouds. These two guilds occupied the second and fourth places in the capital's guild ranking. The third was the Star Alliance, which had recently risen to power. After receiving Ouyang Shua's invitation, Shadow Fox and Devouring Clouds were both excited and nervous. The scene that happened in the square of the capital had long since spread in the circle. Forget about the others. The members of the Star Alliance were still locked up in the prison of the Six Doors. The Dust of Star was even worse. He was sentenced to a month in prison. The person in front of them was really terrifying. When the White Snake came out to invite the two of them, she had already hinted that the Star Alliance was the target. Dark Shadow Fox did not comment on this, but Dream Cloud's Swallowtop responded positively. Once the Dust of Star came to the capital, he pulled the Dream House down in a short 1 or 2 months. It wasn't hard to imagine what Devouring Clouds thought of the Dust of Star. Shadow Fox came to the meeting, and his target was the crisscrossing Sword Chi. As the third strongest guild in the China server, the crisscrossing Sword Chi had suppressed all the guilds in the capital to the point that they couldn't even breathe. However, the capital was a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were too many people who wanted to challenge the position of the crisscrossing Sword Chi. Shadow Fox was one of the outstanding figures among them. From the beginning, the Shadow Alliance had been competing with the crisscrossing Sword Chi. Although they didn't win, they still firmly occupied the second place in the capital. Even the Star Alliance couldn't shake them. Shadow Fox's strength and tenacity could be seen clearly. After receiving the invitation from the White Snake, Shadow Fox realized that his chance to turn the tables had come. From the 2 targets that the White Snake invited, Ouyang Shua knew that the White Snake had already grasped the grudges between the guilds and the capital in a short period of time. The ability of the commander of the capital was not to be underestimated. Compared to the intelligence station, the Black Snake Guards were miles ahead of them. Ouyang Shua felt that spending 100,000 gold coins was not a loss at all. It was worth it. Both of you are the top figures in the capital. Are you interested in cooperating with Shanghai City? After the small talk, Ouyang Shua went straight to the main topic. With his current position, he didn't need to beat around the bush when he spoke and did things. No matter what it was, he would say it clearly and straightforwardly. He tried his best to simplify complicated matters. There was nothing else but confidence. I'd like to hear the details. Although Dream Clouds was anxious, his words were very professional. Ouyang Shua nodded and said, "It's simple. The Alliance of Mountains and Seas will sell you a batch of elite equipment, including strong bows, heavy swords, and shields. The condition is that I want to make it impossible for the Star Alliance to establish a foothold in the Third Circle." The Third Circle of the capital was the focus of the guilds. If a guild couldn't establish a foothold in the Third Circle, it was the same as giving up the fight for the first position. And the further they went, the greater the gap would be. Ouyang Shua's request was basically saying that he wanted to make it impossible for the Star Alliance to establish a foothold in the capital. In truth, Ouyang Shua's conditions had already tempted Shadow Fox and Dream Clouds. This kind of elite equipment was something that all the big guilds dreamed of. Right now, it was a crucial period for the big guilds to explore the Third Circle. If they could have this batch of equipment and pair it with 1 or 2 elite groups, they would be successful. Once they had the initiative, the benefits would be huge. Otherwise, Xiesian wouldn't have been so anxious during the Alliance of Mountains and Seas meeting. The batch of equipment that Ouyang Shua agreed to sell did not take up the share of the other members. Instead, he took out half of the equipment that he had exchanged. After all, Ouyang Shua had placed an order for the heavy swords and shields. To be continued. Chapter 376. Ouyang Shua stated his conditions, and Jing Fox instinctively wanted to bargain. It's not easy to deal with the Star Alliance. When Ouyang Shua heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Ji Inghu looked cool, but he liked to beat around the bush. "You're wrong. To me, dealing with the Star Alliance is just a way to vent my anger. There are no real benefits. But for the two of them, it was a great opportunity. Pay and gain are always proportional, aren't they? Jinghu was stunned when he heard Ouyang Shua's words. He had not expected Ouyang Shua to be so confident. Of course, Ouyang Shua was confident. If Shadow Alliance didn't want to cooperate with him, he could find another alliance. At that time, the ones who would suffer would be the two in front of him. He believed that Jinghu would never give up on this collaboration. It was a negotiation. As long as the other party's bottom line was grasped, anything could be discussed. Seeing that Ouyang Shua was sitting on the fishing platform, Jing Fox could only smile bitterly. It was not a good feeling to be caught by someone. He was also a decisive person. Seeing that things couldn't be done, he immediately gave up and nodded his head in agreement. At this point, the cooperation between the three parties was completed. Ouyang Shua had no intention of bringing Shadow Alliance and Dream Pavilion into the Guild Alliance. Even if he wanted to bring them in, he would have to wait until they got rid of Unhindered Sword Aura and Star Alliance in the capital. On the other hand, Thread had successfully joined the Alliance of Mountains and Seas under Ouyang Shua's recommendation. In reality, Ouyang Shua did not expect the Shadow Alliance and the Dream Pavilion to be able to defeat the crisscrossing Sword Aura. Even defeating the Star Alliance would be difficult. How could it be easy for crisscrossing Sword Aura to dominate the capital? Since the hidden family behind the Star Alliance had decided to come out, they would definitely go all out. Ouyang Shua's goal was to keep the guilds in the capital in check and balance each other. He wanted to tie down the energy of the Star Alliance and the Unhindered Sword Aura so that they would be exhausted from dealing with the civil war. Thus, Ouyang Shua was satisfied. In the end, it would be up to the Mountain and Sea Alliance to deal with these two guilds. After sending off Shadow Fox and Dream Cloud Swallowtop, Ouyang Shua stayed in the courtyard and did not go anywhere else. With the upcoming drama in the capital, he could sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. That afternoon, a batch of elite equipment promised by Shanghai City, including 1,000 strong bows, 1,000 divine arm crossbows, 500 heavy swords, and 2,000 shields, arrived at the capital. Ouyang Shua set the price at 44,000 gold coins and sold it to Shadow Alliance and Dream House. As for the price of the equipment, Ouyang Shua added 10% to the base price within the alliance. Even so, it still made Shadow Fox and Dream Cloud Swallowtop incredibly happy. If such an elite piece of equipment were to be sold on the market, it would be at least 5 to 10 points more expensive. Ouyang Shua kept 20,000 gold coins from selling the equipment to make up for his investment in the Black Snake Guards and maintain the funds he had on hand at 50,000 gold coins. The remaining 24,000 gold coins were transferred to the treasury. The funds would be used as a special fund to expand the 4 major military workshops. According to Shanghai City's plan, the military workshop area in the Eastern District would be expanded eastward all the way to the river in the canyon. Even the docks along the river were included as military docks. After the expansion, the area of the military workshop was more than 5 times larger than before. After a year of nurturing, thousands of mid-level blacksmiths were born, and they would support the rapid development of the military industry in the territory. With the support of Shanghai City's equipment, Shadow Alliance and Dream House were full of confidence. On the 4th of April, Dream House suddenly attacked Star Alliance's leveling team in the 3rd circle. Star Alliance was caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. The main force of Star Alliance was still in prison. Facing Dream House's relentless attacks, they were forced to give up a large number of leveling and resource gathering points. Crisscrossing Sword Aura wanted to send reinforcements, but they were stopped by Shadow Alliance. For a moment, the atmosphere in the capital became unusually tense. On the 5th of April, the main force of Star Alliance was released. Once they were released, they launched a powerful counterattack under the leadership of the various Hall Masters and fought with Dream House. Dream House had the initiative, so they were naturally not afraid and fought bravely. The flames of war in the capital burned more and more fiercely, and the war between the guilds officially began. The The various guilds in the China region were like the previous territories, facing a round of survival of the fittest. The strong survived, and the weak perished. Affected by the flames of war in the capital, challengers jumped out from the 9 royal cities one after another, trying to challenge the top 10 guilds. No, it should be the status of the 9 guilds now. Wisp of a thread withdrew, and it just so happened that there was a top 10 guild stationed in each royal city. The players were waiting to see who would fill the gap left by Wisp of a thread. Taking this opportunity, the alliance of the Shanghai Alliance's guilds officially surfaced. 3 of the top 10 guilds and one of the former top 10 guilds joined hands, and the flames of war that had just been ignited stopped for a moment. The guilds in Jianya, Luoyang, and Dali all stopped their banners and drums. The withdrawal of the 3 cities caused the flames of war in the other royal cities to burn even more fiercely. Apart from a capital that was already at war with each other, Xianyang had bloody romance guarding it, and no one dared to have any ideas about it. Xiangyang's 18 steeds of Swallow and Cloud had the support of Lord Chunshin, and they could be considered to have a stable footing. Chang'an's embroidered uniform guard, Chuanzhou's flowing light pavilion, and Chengdu's Laojun Temple were the top 10 guilds that hadn't cooperated with the territories yet, but they had already become the main targets of the ambitious people. Laojun Temple, in particular, was ranked last and was under the most pressure. There used to be an unknown guild in Chengdu called the Blazing Glory Society, and its president, Ming Yi, was also a descendant of a secretive aristocratic family, and it was said that his ancestor was once a member of the imperial family. With the appearance of the Blazing Glory Society, Laojun Temple became the dominant guild in Chengdu, and it gradually evolved into the Two Heroes Guild. Rumor had it that the Blazing Glory Society had already joined forces with the Jianxia County of the Chengdu district. As a result, Laojun Temple faced even more pressure. The Blazing Glory Society's strong rise became the best example of this round of guild wars. Taking this opportunity, the Black Snake Guards also showed off their skills, taking advantage of the chaos, and planted spies in the major guilds. Ouyang Shuo, on the other hand, sat on a fishing platform calmly. No one knew that he was the cause of this round of guild wars. 6th of April, Ouyang Shuo brought the white snake to the tea house again. The waiter recognized Ouyang Shuo and enthusiastically led him to a private room that had been reserved. That young master in white hasn't arrived yet. Not yet. Ouyang Shuo nodded and waited patiently. About half an hour later, the scholar in white appeared at the entrance of the tea house. The waiter had been guarding the door. When he saw the young master in white, he immediately greeted him. "Young master, please come in." As he spoke, he led the way to a private room. The young master in white followed behind. Seeing that the destination was a private room, he asked in confusion, "Waiter, I only need a seat in the lobby. There's no need to go to a private room." The waiter smiled and said, "To be honest, young master, there's a noble person waiting for you in a private room." "Noble person? I don't know anyone in the capital city." "Young master, you'll know when you go in." The young master in white was straightforward. "All right, then I'll go in." Pushing open the screen of the private room, he saw a young man brewing tea with a focused expression. When the young man heard the voice, he looked up and saw that it was Ouyang Shuo. Ouyang Shuo put down the tea set, stood up, and tidied up his clothes. According to the ancient etiquette, he cupped his hands, with the back of his hands facing outwards. After pushing them forward, he retracted them to his chest. "How can I say that I have no clothes?" The young master in white's eyes narrowed. Obviously, he knew Ouyang Shuo. Among the historical figures, there were very few who didn't know of Ouyang Shuo's existence. The young master in white was magnanimous. He returned the greeting and said, "Commoner Wei Yang greets Marquis Lian Province." When Ouyang Shuo heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He was even more surprised than Wei Yang. Wei Yang, the famous king of Shang during the Warring States period, the representative of legalism, and the founder of Qin States unification. Any of his titles were enough to make people feel deep veneration. This time, he had done the right thing by waiting for the hare to come to him. "Please." The white snake stood up, and sat behind Ouyang Sha. Wei Yang sat opposite Ouyang Sha calmly. At this moment, Wei Yang also recognized that the Marquis Lin province before him was the young man he met on the stairs. It seemed that the Marquis Lin province was waiting for him here. In the blink of an eye, Wei Yang had already figured out the cause and effect. Both of them were smart people. There were many things that didn't need to be said out loud. Since he had confirmed the other party's identity, Ouyang Sha wasn't in a hurry. He accompanied Wei Yang and watched the chess game downstairs with great interest. In the hall on the first floor, there was a huge chessboard. Every time the players made a move, there would be a specialist to review the game and place the corresponding huge chess pieces on the chessboard for the guests to watch. Ouyang Sha wasn't proficient in the way of chess. In his previous life, he was just an adventure-type player. He didn't have the leisure to do so. However, after Jiang Shang settled down in Shanghai City, Ouyang Sha would occasionally accompany the old man to play a few games. Although he would be defeated every time, his chess skills improved rapidly. Therefore, Ouyang Sha was able to understand a thing or two when he saw the chess game downstairs. As for Wei Yang, he was a top expert in the way of chess and was proficient in it. The game of chess lasted for 2 hours. The white snake, who was sitting behind Ouyang Sha, couldn't sit still. Heaven took pity on him. As a mercenary, it didn't matter if you asked him to go into battle to kill the enemy, spy on them, or disguise them. But chess? Oh my God! It was a form of torture. The white snake looked at the increasingly full chessboard and felt like he was reading a book from heaven. He really couldn't understand why the Marquis didn't directly invite Wei Yang, since he already knew his identity. Instead, he was watching the game. Such inefficiency wasn't the Marquis's usual style. How could the white snake know that Wei Yang was different from others? Unless he was willing to become an official, it would be hard to persuade such a great talent. With Wei Yang's style, he would rather linger in the tea houses and taverns than visit the various places. Ouyang Sha knew that Wei Yang had the intention to live in seclusion. Therefore, Ouyang Sha seemed to be watching the game on the surface, but he was actually trying to figure out what Wei Yang wanted. How could he persuade this representative of legalism to come out of seclusion? It was difficult. P.S. Shamelessly asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Thanks. To be continued. Chapter 377. After the chess game ended, the atmosphere in the private room changed. The white snake's heart tightened. It knew that the critical moment had come. The famous scholars of legalism pay particular attention to practicing what they preach. Why do you say that, sir? Ouyang Sha was the first to attack, secretly mocking Wei Yang for abandoning himself to such a degenerate state. In the end, the method of implementation will be for naught, like a dream. What do you think? Wei Yang's expression was lonely, and a trace of pain flashed in his eyes. Mister, you are mistaken. Mister's method laid the foundation for the unification of the world. How could it be for naught? Ouyang Sha was not lying. Wei Yang could be called the first true reformer in China's history. Shang Yang's reform did not only affect the Qin kingdom, nor was it limited to that time. It affected China for thousands of years. The great Qin is but a second life. How could it not be for naught? After entering the wilderness, Wei Yang had a clear understanding of China's 5,000 years of history, which was why he was in so much pain. Wei Yang was an idealist with the sincerity and passion of a religious man. He carried out reforms in the Qin kingdom and promoted legalism. Even though he died under the laws of Qin that he had set up, he had no complaints. What he was pained about was that the Qin technique he created had finally vanished in a thin air. Ouyang Sha shook his head and said, Mister is mistaken again. Qin is only the second generation, because the state of Qin is stubbornly sticking to the laws created by Sir, and did not keep up with the times. Back then, when Master entered Qin, he did not accept an official position in Qin. He took the lead to enter the countryside of Qin and investigated the situation of the people for several months. Only then was he able to formulate laws that were in line with the law. Why? It's just suitable. When Wei Yang heard this, he remained silent. With Wei Yang's talent, how could he not understand this logic? It was just that being in the situation, it was hard to avoid being swayed by emotions. Ouyang Shuo continued, Mister is a great talent. You should advance bravely and carry out the reform, spreading the prestige of legalism and passing on the teachings of legalism. It would be shameful for me to continue loitering around the tavern and tea house. Wei Yang heard this and heaved a long sigh. With a melancholy expression, he said, Where is Duke Xiao? The success of Shang Yang's reform in Qin cannot be achieved without the support of Duke Xiao. Such a monarch was hard to come by in 100 years. When Ouyang Shuo heard this, his expression became serious. He stood up and bowed, saying, Although Wu Yi is not talented, I am willing to follow Duke Xiao's example. Wei Yang was instantly moved. Ouyang Shuo's words were equivalent to a promise. The promise of the marquis was worth more than 1,000 caddies. At this moment, the air seemed to have frozen, and it was suffocating. Ouyang Shuo was waiting for Wei Yang's decision. After a long while, Wei Yang let out a long sigh. He straightened his clothes and stood up as well. Marquis, this bow, the meeting between the ruler and his subject, finally became a beautiful story. The White Snake witnessed the entire process of the Marquis persuading Wei Yang and could not help but gasp in admiration. Name, Wei Yang, divine level. Title, Lord of Shang Dynasty. Warring States, Qin. Identity, Shanghai City resident. Occupation, civil official. Loyalty, 75 commander, 72 strength, 35 intelligence, 88 politics, 95 specialty. Rule of law, increases territorial administrative efficiency by 25, increases territorial integrity by 30. Ruthless official, increases territorial prestige by 20. Just and honest, increases territorial integrity by 20. Ancient book, Book of Shang Jun. Evaluation, Wei Yang, the great son of the school of legalism, the hero of a politician. The Lord of Shang was Duke Xiaogong of Qin. He made clear laws, forbade treachery, rewarded nobles, and punished those who committed crimes. He weighed the pros and cons, adjusted the severity of the situation, and severed the boundaries between the people. He encouraged the people to farm and benefit the land. He did not have anything else to do. He worked hard on the land and was used to war. When the army moved, the land expanded, and when the army stopped, the country became rich. Therefore, Qin was invincible in the world. After subduing Wei Yang, Ouyang Shuo did not stay in the capital any longer. He returned to Shanghai City on the same day. After returning, Ouyang Shuo did not immediately assign Wei Yang any duties. According to Wei Yang, he also had to inspect Lianzhou County for a period of time to understand the people's feelings before returning to his post. Ouyang Shuo arranged for 2 guards to accompany Wei Yang for inspection. Although Lianzhou was peaceful, there were still some bandits, so it was not absolutely safe. At the same time, Ouyang Shuo gave Wei Yang a token. With this token, Wei Yang could see all the officials in the county, and no one was allowed to obstruct him. As for Wei Yang's position, Ouyang Shuo had already made a decision. Among the 3 big departments, the Administrative Bureau, the Interior Bureau, and the Finance Bureau, the Interior Bureau was in charge of the territory's laws and punishments. It was a most suitable place for Wei Yang to display his talents. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo had to make arrangements for the current Interior Bureau chief, Tian Wenjing. If he only arranged for Tian Wenjing to be Wei Yang's assistant, it would be overkill. The territory lacked civil officials, and Ouyang Shuo was not so domineering. According to Ouyang Shuo, he wanted Tian Wenjing to be in charge of Cliff Mountain City. If everything went smoothly, Tian Wenjing would also be the candidate to be the county governor of Cheongzhou County. To Tian Wenjing, the best place for him to display his talents was still in charge of politics. He was not called the model governor during the Yongzheng period of the Qing dynasty for nothing. Being in charge of Cliff Mountain was the most suitable. Following Ouyang Shuo's series of arrangements, the foundation of Cliff Mountain City was gradually stabilized. It was time for a powerful person to be stationed there. Neither Sun Xiaoyan nor Bainan Pu had such talents. In the first half of the year, before the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom threatened Lianzhou County, Ouyang Shua's main focus was on the construction of Cliff Mountain City. He wanted to expand the territory's strategic depth. The next day, Ouyang Shua summoned Tian Wenjing in his study. Yangon, do you want to be in charge of politics? Tian Wenjing was stunned when he heard this. Even if he wanted to be in charge of politics, he would be demoted if he became the magistrate of a prefecture. Moreover, there were no vacancies in Lianzhou County. The only vacancy was in Cliff Mountain City. Could it be? Tian Wenjing's heart wavered when he thought of this. He was well aware of the Marquis' strategy to develop Jingzhou Island. He also knew the strategic position of Jingzhou Island in the Marquis' heart. Not to mention the future, the status of Cliff Mountain City was only below that of Shanghai City. Marquis, what do you mean? Compared to others, Tian Wenjing's cultivation was much more profound. Ouyang Shua had high hopes for this important official. He said, "What I mean is for you to temporarily be in charge of Cliff Mountain City, but it will not be limited to that. You will be responsible for all the government affairs of Jingzhou Island." Tian Wenjing was excited when he heard this. A county governor, the first county governor of a territory. No one could remain calm in the face of such a heavy responsibility. Tian Wenjing was still Tian Wenjing. The cold-faced chief was so calm that it was chilling. He quickly collected his emotions and said, "Then, what about the Internal Affairs Department?" Wei Yang's arrival did not alarm anyone, so Tian Wenjing was still unaware. Ouyang Shua nodded and said, "Wei Yang has already become an official in the territory and is now inspecting various places. When he returns, Yangon, you will hand over the position to him and then go to Cliff Mountain City to take up the post." Wei Yang. Tian Wenjing could not help but exclaim. The name of the king of Shang was famous throughout the ages. Yes, Ouyang Shua nodded. It was interesting that this cold-faced chief was surprised. "Congratulations, Marquis." After the conversation ended, Ouyang Shua said, "Yangon, use this period of time to think about how to put on a good show in Cliff Mountain City and Jingzhou Island. I will not let Marquis down." Ouyang Shua was about to speak when he suddenly heard a system notification. System notification. Congratulations to player Lin Yu, the territory's martial artist, for recovering his skills and breaking through the bottleneck to become a fist technique grandmaster. Special reward, 2,000 reputation points. A grandmaster. The territory's second grandmaster was finally born. Lin Yu did not disappoint Ouyang Shua. In just a month, not only did he recover his skills, but he also improved further and became a grandmaster. Following that, there was a system announcement. System notification. Congratulations to Shanghai City for giving birth to the first grandmaster-level martial artist in the territory. Shanghai City is specially granted the title Home of Fist Techniques. Congratulations to player Lin Yu. Once the announcement was made, the players were naturally amazed. Shanghai City had always been able to create miracles. Some players had already jokingly called it the City of Miracles. Therefore, the system announcement this time did not cause much of a stir among the players. The only effect was that adventure-type players who were skilled in fist techniques would be more interested in Shanghai City. It could be predicted that there would be more and more players coming to Shanghai City to learn martial arts. After Tian Wenjing left, Ouyang Shua checked the attributes of the Home of Fist Techniques. Home of Fist Techniques. Increase the physical fitness of the territory's residents by 10. Increase the fist technique proficiency of the territory's martial artists by 10. Increase the fist technique power of the territory's martial artists by 10. The attributes of the Home of Fist Techniques were even stronger than the Home of Martial Arts that Song Jia obtained when she founded the Eastern Hedge Sword faction. It was especially useful for those who specialized in fist techniques. Regardless of whether it was the military or the people, they would all benefit from it. Even Ouyang Shua's personal strength had increased because he practiced the 8 Extremities Fist. So far, Shanghai City had obtained 5 titles. They were First County in the World, Sacred Land of the Military, Home of Forging, Home of Martial Arts, and Home of Fist Techniques. At this moment, Ouyang Shua heard another system notification. System notification. Congratulations to player Linyu. The home of martial arts and home of fist techniques titles have similar attributes. They can be merged. Do you want to merge them? Merge. System notification. Congratulations to player Linyu for successfully merging the territory titles. Shanghai City automatically obtained the title Prosperous Land of Martial Arts. The original Home of Martial Arts and Home of Fist Techniques titles have automatically disappeared. Prosperous Land of Martial Arts increased the physical fitness of the territory's residents by 30. Increase the fist technique proficiency of the territory's martial artists by 10. Increase the fist technique power of the territory's martial artists by 10. Note, this title can be upgraded to Sacred Land of Martial Arts. The requirements for upgrading are to obtain at least 2 more single-type martial arts titles. For example, Home of Sword Techniques, Home of Spear Techniques, etc. Ouyang Shuo was speechless. The so-called merging was just a simple stacking of the attributes of the 2 titles. The only thing worth looking forward to was the final title, Sacred Land of Martial Arts. And to be upgraded to Sacred Land of Martial Arts, at least 2 martial arts masters had to be born. To be continued. The only flaw was that perhaps it was because he was practicing the Nining manual, but the originally cheerful young man now had a feminine air about him, which made people fear him. Ouyang Shuo had also heard of it. In the sect, this eldest senior brother Chui Tianqi's prestige was extremely high, and he was very strict with his junior brothers and junior sisters. The group of disciples was somewhat afraid of this eldest senior brother. Fortunately, Chui Tianqi was a cultivation maniac. He was a man of few words and spent most of his time either cultivating his inner force in the quiet room or practicing his swordsmanship at the back of the mountain. He rarely mingled with other disciples. On the contrary, Ban Xia, as the eldest senior sister, did not put on any airs and was extremely popular among the disciples. When the Nining Sutra was used on the male disciples, it showed that they were feminine. When it was used on the female disciples, it showed that they were charming. The higher the cultivation, the greater the charm. Ban Xia had an extraordinary appearance, so it was no wonder that the group of male disciples were head over heels in love with her. Greetings to the Marquis. The group of disciples, under Chui Tianqi's lead, knelt down on one knee. Ouyang Shuo nodded and came to Chui Tianqi's side. He patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Not bad." Chui Tianqi's heart warmed. He had extremely complicated feelings towards the Marquis. The Marquis was not only his benefactor, but also his elder brother, and also his master, so on and so forth. To him, receiving the Marquis's praise was undoubtedly the greatest joy. Unfortunately, since the Nining Sutra had reached a higher level, Chui Tianqi no longer knew what a smile was. At this moment, his expression was somewhat stiff, and his smile was uglier than crying. Seeing this, Ouyang Shuo remained silent. Behind every successful person, there was a period of effort that few people knew about. For example, Ban Xia and Chui Tianqi became Song Jia's disciple at the same time. Her aptitude was also not bad, but her martial arts was much weaker than Chui Tianqi's. Why? The environment of the sect, the glory of the eldest senior sister, the flattery and infatuation of the junior brothers and sisters. All of these had gradually made Ban Xia lost, and she even forgot her original intention of becoming a disciple. However, Ban Xia did not know this, and thought that her influence in the sect was higher than her senior brother Chui Tianqi. She even looked down on Chui Tianqi's hard work. The two's different experiences really made one sigh with emotion. Ouyang Shuo was not Ban Xia's master, so he naturally would not teach her. He also smiled slightly. Towards the Marquis, Ban Xia's feelings were equally complicated. When she was recruited into the Marquis's mansion, Ban Xia was grateful and respectful towards the Marquis, and even had a trace of admiration. Everything changed that morning. The Marquis wanted to set the rules in the Marquis's mansion, disregarding the relationship between master and servant, and brazenly expelled her from the Marquis's mansion. If not for Zi Su and the others pleading, Ban Xia would not have the chance to become Song Jia's disciple. At that moment, in Ban Xia's heart, there was inevitably a trace of resentment. This thorn was still stuck in Ban Xia's heart and could not be completely removed. After half a year, seeing the Marquis again, Ban Xia's feelings were naturally complicated. Compared to half a year ago, the man in front of her had become even more charming. Every move emitted a dignified aura that could not be looked at directly. His calm bearing, unparalleled grace, was simply poison to young girls. In front of the Marquis, Ban Xia unconsciously displayed her charm, hoping to attract his attention. Knowing that the Marquis was coming, she specially woke up early today and dressed up meticulously. Unfortunately, who was Ouyang Shuo? He had seen all kinds of beauties. In his eyes, Ban Xia was only a green apple. Ouyang Shuo only smiled slightly and did not linger on Ban Xia for a moment. Seeing this, Ban Xia's heart became cold, and the smile on her face had already disappeared. Let's go, we'll talk in detail inside the hall. Cui Tianqi nodded and led the way in front. After half a year of construction, the Eastern Fence Sword sect became more and more magnificent. At least in terms of architecture, it already had the style of a large sect. In the main hall of the sect, Ouyang Shuo formally introduced Lin Yu and his group to Cui Tianqi and the others. Ouyang Shuo looked around the hall and said, "Brother Lin is a fist technique grandmaster, and he was invited to take the position of an elder of the Eastern Fence Sword sect. When your sect leader returns to the mountain, we will hold a formal induction ceremony. At the same time, Elder Lin will open another hall in the sect, called Baji Hall, which specializes in teaching Baji fist techniques." Hearing this, Lin Yu took the lead and cupped his hands to the crowd, which was a formal meeting. On behalf of the sect, Cui Tianqi said, "Welcome, Elder Lin. Welcome, Elder Lin." All the disciples shouted in unison, and their faces were full of joy. The prosperity of the sect was naturally a good thing for them. When your sect leader is not in the sect, the affairs of the sect will be managed by Elder Lin. Ouyang Shuo then announced a rule to establish Lin Yu's position in the sect. Basically, Lin Yu is the second most important person in the Eastern Fence Sword sect. "Yes, Marquis." All the disciples answered in unison, but their voices were not as orderly and loud as before. Joining a sect was one thing, but having one more person in charge of the sect was another. When Song Jia was not in the sect, some of the disciples inevitably slacked off. Now that there was an elder to manage the daily affairs of the sect, it was naturally not as easy as before. Especially Ban Xia, her heart trembled, because Cui Tianqi basically did not manage the sect affairs. Ban Xia was equivalent to the young sect leader in the sect. Since Lin Yu came, he naturally did not receive such treatment. Seeing this, Ouyang Shuo frowned vaguely. After thinking for a while, he did not say anything. He believed that with Lin Yu's ability, it was enough to suppress this group of brats and quickly establish prestige in the sect. What kind of person was Lin Yu? He clearly saw the scene in the main hall. Before coming to the Eastern Fence Sword sect, he had already predicted the current situation, so he was naturally not afraid. After announcing the matters, Ouyang Shuo dismissed all the disciples. Ban Xia led Lin Yu and the others to the courtyard that had been arranged in advance. Ouyang Shuo called Cui Tianqi to a quiet room to talk alone. "Marquis, Junior's sister Ban Xia." Cui Tianqi wanted to say something, but stopped. He looked dull, but in fact his heart was clear. Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said, "Don't mention her. Tianqi, the sect now has Elder Lin. What's your plan?" "Plan?" Cui Tianqi was puzzled and said, "Cultivate." Ouyang Shuo shook his head and said, "If you want to become a true expert, you can't just bury yourself in the sect and cultivate. You have to go out and gain experience like your master." "Can I?" A trace of excitement flashed in Cui Tianqi's eyes. "Of course. How about this? You pack up and go down the mountain in a few days. If you don't want to go alone, you can also pick a few junior brothers and sisters to go with you." "Yes." Cui Tianqi nodded hard. Ouyang Shuo took out a heavy sword and a gold note from his storage pouch and handed them to Cui Tianqi. The heavy sword was specially made by him. It was a dark gold sword and was extremely precious. It was not that Ouyang Shuo was biased, but this heavy sword was not suitable for Ban Xia. Marquis, Cui Tianqi recognized the extraordinary sword and was somewhat surprised. Looking at the banknotes, the denomination was 1,000 gold coins. He was even more shocked. Since young, he had never seen so much money. Take it. How can you go out and gain experience without a good weapon? Ouyang Shuo said with a smile. Your sister and you dragged me to bring the gold note. Thank you, Marquis. Cui Tianqi felt warm in his heart. He was even more grateful when he thought of that sister. After you go down the mountain, you better go back to the residence and see your sister. She missed you after not seeing you for half a year, and you will be happy to see you so successful. Yes. Cui Tianqi nodded again. All right, I have to go. Ouyang Shuo stood up, and Cui Tianqi quickly followed. Ouyang Shuo patted his shoulder again and said with a smile, No need to send me off. Study hard, and when you become a true expert, you will be able to do so. I have plans for you. Yes. Being able to help the Marquis was Cui Tianqi's highest goal. To be continued. Chapter 379. On the 10th day of the 4th month, Cui Tianqi brought his 11 junior brothers and sisters down the mountain and went to the manor to bid farewell. When Lin Yu learned that Cui Tianqi was going to leave the mountain to train, he selected 6 of the most promising disciples from the Baji Hall to accompany him. Including Ban Xia, there were 12 young swordsmen, 6 men and 6 women. Ouyang Shuo recommended them to go to the Five Fingers Mountain to gain experience. They might even be able to meet sect Master Song Jia there. After sending off Cui Tianqi's group, Ouyang Shuo was finally free. Lianzhou County's government affairs were running smoothly. Ouyang Shuo no longer needed to attend to everything personally. Bing'er also started to go to school, and the entire manor became much more deserted. Little Blue and Little White had been cultivating at the Spirit Beast Pavilion in Cliff Mountain City with Little Shui. He wondered what kind of metamorphosis the 3 little ones would undergo in the end. As he had to wait for Wei Yang to return from his inspection, Ouyang Shuo deliberately delayed the time to go to Cliff Mountain City. Taking advantage of this rare free time, Ouyang Shuo put even more effort into practicing martial arts. The assassination attempt in Jingdo had, in the end, affected him. Ouyang Shuo began to pay more attention to the improvement of his personal strength. After all, even if he had the protection of the guards, it still couldn't compare to the improvement of his own strength. The situation was ever-changing, and there would always be times when the guards couldn't take care of him. Needless to say, Inner Cannon of the Yellow Arch was a painstaking skill that had to be cultivated every day. Other than that, he also trained hard in his spear and palm techniques. In addition to training alone, Ouyang Shuo would also find a few guards to accompany him to train in the drill ground. First, there was a guard to spar with, then 2, then 3, and so on. Every day, Ouyang Shuo could feel his body improving. Every time they sparred, the bodyguard would shed a layer of skin. Ouyang Shuo himself didn't feel good either. Injuries were unavoidable during fierce battles. Ever since the Yellow Thearcha's internal cannon broke through to the 6th level, it ushered in a period of rapid growth. At the beginning of March, when Ouyang Shuo was still patrolling Lianzhou County, his inner cannon of the Yellow Emperor had already broken through to the 7th layer, and the upper limit of his Zhen Yuan had increased to 500 points. As the upper limit of his true essence increased, Ouyang Shuo's cultivation efficiency didn't change. He could only increase his true essence by 3 points every day. If everything went well, the inner cannon of the Yellow Arch would advance again in early July. Every time the inner cannon of the Yellow Arch advanced to the next level, it not only brought about an increase in quintessential essence, the strengthening of meridians, and the expansion of Dantian, but also an overall improvement in physical fitness. It should be said that when Ouyang Shuo cultivated the Yellow Emperor's internal cannon to the 6th layer, he could be considered to have truly crossed the threshold of a martial artist, and his physical strength would reach the strength of a bull. Don't underestimate the power of an ox. It's very impressive. For an ordinary person, 200 gene of strength was already considered very strong. However, the strength of an ox was equivalent to 1,200 gene, enough to split a mountain. Every time the inner cannon of the Yellow the Arch advanced a level, it would increase the strength of an ox. In other words, Ouyang Shuo, who'd cultivated to the 7th level, already possessed the strength of 2 bulls, and this was already extremely terrifying. Even without the support of the 8 extremities fist, one punch was enough to beat an ordinary person to death. Now, Ouyang Shuo didn't feel any discomfort wearing the 45-kilogram General Radiant armor. He could now wear the armor for a long time without feeling exhausted. Ouyang Shuo held the 35-kilogram Heavenly Demon Spear in his hand, as if it was an extension of his arm. Not only that, the true origin of the inner cannon of the Yellow Emperor also had the effect of quickly recovering from fatigue. Often, Ouyang Shuo would be exhausted from practicing the spear that day, but at night, he would circulate the inner cannon of the Yellow Emperor, and the next day, he would be full of vigor. Under the nourishment of the golden true origin, the fatigue of his muscles and the hidden injuries caused by training completely disappeared, and he was once again full of vigor. Not only that, with the stretching and relaxing, the toughness of his muscles would also be continuously tempered and improved, which led to the increase of Ouyang Shuo's body's flexibility and explosive power. Strong physical quality, terrifying explosive power, and fast recovery ability. With these 3 added together, Ouyang Shuo could be considered as a qualified general. With the further improvement of his physical quality, the battle experience from his previous life that had been hidden in the depths of Ouyang Shuo's consciousness began to slowly awaken. In his previous life, Ouyang Shuo was able to obtain the title of Two-Faced Azura, and it wasn't just for show. Because his body was too weak in this life, the battle experience from his previous life didn't match and was hidden in his sea of consciousness, and it didn't awaken together with his memories. Therefore, although Ouyang Shuo was an adventure-type player in his previous life, after his rebirth, it was equivalent to starting all over again in terms of martial arts. With the awakening of this part of his consciousness, Ouyang Shuo's martial arts also began to advance by leaps and bounds. In his previous life, Ouyang Shuo used the halberd, which had many similarities with the spear. Therefore, after the awakening of his battle awareness, Ouyang Shuo's spear skills changed every day, and he improved every day. In a short period of time, his Yang family spear skills had already broken through to the 5th realm, mastery. Beyond that, there were only 2 realms left, trance and return to simplicity. After mastering the Yang family spear skills, when Ouyang Shuo fought, he didn't need to deliberately think about which move to use. Instead, he could instinctively react according to the enemy's attack and choose the most suitable move. In this way, Ouyang Shuo's adaptability on the battlefield was greatly improved. The battlefield wasn't like a martial arts competition between 2 people. There were countless blades, spears, and sword shadows, and it was hard to know which angle one would be attacked from. Therefore, a general's adaptability was very important. This was especially true when they were besieged. One of the main reasons why Zhao Zilong, the martial god during the 3 Kingdoms period, could kill his way in and out of thousands of soldiers and horses was because of the flexibility of his spear skills and superb adaptability. Of course, the current Ouyang Shuo had only just passed. Only by mastering the spear skills to trance could he truly display the power of the Yang family spear skills. Among the generals of Shanghai City, Shi Wansui and Luo Shixin were both experts in spear skills, and their spear skills had long reached trance. As for the highest level of return to simplicity, one must be a grandmaster in spear skills. Therefore, compared to a general like Luo Shixin, Ouyang Shuo still had a certain gap. In addition to practicing the Yang family spear skills, Ouyang Shuo also tried to integrate the 8 extremities fist into the Yang family spear skills and slowly figure out a set of spear skills that was most suitable for him. This was even more of a distant goal. The premise of merging martial skills was to thoroughly understand the 2 martial skills in front of him. The most basic condition was that the 8 extremities fist that Ouyang Shua practiced must also reach the integration realm. Fortunately, as Lin Yu became a grandmaster in fist skills, his territory obtained the title of Prosperous Land of Martial Arts, and Ouyang Shua practiced the 8 extremities fist more and more smoothly. He had a premonition that in less than a month, he would be able to cultivate the 8 extremities fist to the integration realm. In addition to the improvement of his spear skills, the awakened consciousness also brought Ouyang Shua an even greater surprise. In his previous life, the other martial skills that Ouyang Shua practiced were basically gold-level martial skills, and only 2 were king-level martial skills. One was a halberd skill, and the other was a lightness skill. For the current Ouyang Shua, the halberd skills were useless. Therefore, Ouyang Shua concentrated on recalling, carefully pondering, and after spending countless efforts after 10 days, he finally successfully recreated the martial skill that made him famous in his previous life, Ghostly Shadow Floating Wind, in the game. System notification: congratulations to player not saying that has no clothes, self-created the lightness skill, Ghostly Shadow Floating Wind. The reward is 10,000 points of reputation points. Congratulations player. Ghostly Shadow Floating Wind was a king-level lightness skill, and because it was classified as a special martial skill, even if it did not have the words scripture or canon in it, it was still a genuine martial skill. In his previous life, Ouyang Shua had relied on the unpredictability of the Ghostly Shadow Floating Wind, as well as his blood-red eyes when he fought. He had an attitude of a man risking his life, as well as a cold and callous heart. This was how he had obtained the name of Azura. With the help of Ghostly Shadow Floating Wind, it could be said that Ouyang Shua's weakness in the lightness skill was made up. In just half a month, Ouyang Shua's strength had achieved a huge leap. It was not an exaggeration to say that among the generals in the territory, other than historical generals like Shi Wansui and Luo Shixin, the young generals like Lin Yi and Wang Feng were no longer Ouyang Shua's opponents. Even Dai Qin, who was known as the Black Tiger of the Grassland, Ouyang Shua dared to compete with him. In Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua's martial strength could already be ranked in the top 10. Among the generals in Shanghai City, Killing God Bai Qi's martial strength was the highest, followed by the ferocious General Eli, and even Shi Wansui was slightly inferior to him. Below him were Luo Shixin, Fan Lihua, and Mu Tuing. As for Sun Bin, although he created his own fist technique, he was only slightly stronger than ordinary people. Lin Yi, Wang Feng, and Zhao Sihu were the 3 rising stars, and they were also the 3 generals with the highest martial strength that the territory had nurtured. Not only that, the 10,000 points of reputation that Ouyang Shua obtained from the self-created martial skill also allowed his reputation points to exceed 100,000 points, and he was promoted to Outstanding Reputation in one go. The next level, which was also the last level of reputation points, was called Famous in the 4 Seas, and it required 1 million points of reputation points. It was impossible for Ouyang Shua to achieve that in a short period of time. Only by participating in a national war would he be able to obtain such a generous reward of reputation points. This was also the origin of Famous in the 4 Seas. Only by conquering other countries could one be considered to be famous. System notification: congratulations, players' reputation points have exceeded 100,000 points, and your reputation has been promoted to Outstanding Reputation. You will be given the title Hero as a reward. Congratulations, player! From the Famous Scholar title when he was famous far and wide, to the State Scholar title when he was famous far and wide, to the Lord of Heroes title when he was famous far and wide, Ouyang Shua's reputation was growing day by day. At the last level, the title given should be Overlord. Hero: increase favorability of historical characters by 45, increase success rate of historical characters by 20. Without a doubt, after obtaining the title Hero, Ouyang Shua's reputation in the circle of historical characters would increase further, and no one would be able to compete with him. It could be foreseen that in the future, more historical characters would take the initiative to come to Shanghai City to become officials. The hero of a generation, and his status was comparable to that of a genius. To be continued. Chapter 380. April 25th, Shanghai City. The director of the Military Intelligence Bureau, Cobra, was reporting to Ouyang Shua. When Cobra took office, it happened to coincide with the unification of the Lianzhou Basin, and he took the opportunity to make an adjustment to the Military Intelligence Department. The first military intelligence team was responsible for collecting intelligence in the direction of the 100,000 Mountains and Qiyu City, while the second military intelligence team was responsible for the Sun Province, where the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was located. The Special Operations Team was in charge of the highest level of intelligence gathering in the military intelligence sector. For example, the task of infiltrating Qiyu City and the headquarters of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was carried out by the Special Operation Group. Like this, the Special Operations Team could be considered to have a proper name in military intelligence, their status higher than Team 1 and Team 2. The Bureau of Military Intelligence would withdraw from Lianzhou County and focus solely on the collection of military intelligence. Ouyang Shua handed over the surveillance of the players' territories, mountain barbarian tribes, and grassland tribes in Lianzhou County to the Black Snake Guards. Before the establishment of the Security Division, Ouyang Shua could only use the Black Snake Guard. With the appointment of Cobra and the addition of a large number of former Rattlesnake members, the strength of the Military Intelligence Department had greatly increased, and their ability to gather intelligence had increased by several levels. The main purpose of Cobra's visit to Ouyang Shua was to report the latest movements of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and Qiyu City. During these 4 months, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's rebel army was like a swarm of locusts. With an unstoppable momentum, they swept across the entire Sun Province. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had already occupied all of Sun Province. After occupying Sun Province, the Revolutionary Army began to build their capital city, naming it Tianjin. In history, the rapid rise and fall of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had a lot to do with the upper echelons of the rebel army, especially the Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan. After the Taiping army entered Nanjing, they immediately carried out a large-scale construction project. They expanded the Liangjiang Governor General's Yamen into the Heavenly King's Mansion. They demolished a large number of civilian houses and employed thousands of men and women as laborers. It took half a year to complete. It was extremely magnificent, but it was soon destroyed by fire. In 1854, it was rebuilt on the original site. Within a radius of more than 10 li, there were palaces and gardens, resplendent and incomparably extravagant. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. The construction of the East Prince residence was also extremely exquisite and pleasing to the eye. Even the crown and shoes, the ceremonial guards and horses were all extremely luxurious. In addition, the Heavenly King continued to select beauties from the common folk to enter the palace. It was reported that Hong Xiuquan had more than 1,000 beauties in his harem. According to Gaia's arrangements, the other core members of the Revolutionary Army did not have any historical memories. Only the leader of the Revolutionary Army had a complete set of memories from his previous life. It was equivalent to saying that Gaia had cheated the rebel leaders and arranged for them to be reborn. Therefore, learning from the lessons of his previous life, Hong Xiuquan would not make any big mistakes in the short term when leading the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. On the contrary, he would work hard to build an ideal Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. After establishing the capital of Tianjin, the rebel army began to expand outwards. Learning from his previous life's lessons, Hong Xiuquan did not wantonly confer the title of king. Yang Xiuqing, Shi Dakai, Xiao Chaogui, and the others all appeared as generals. Hong Xiuquan oversaw Tianjin and commanded from the center. The rebel army formed 4 armies in the east, west, south, and north. Each army had more than 20,000 soldiers, and they claimed to have 100,000 soldiers. They planned to occupy the whole of Guangxi in one fell swoop. In the west, Xiao Chaogui and Feng Yinshan led their troops to attack Zhenan. From the north, Shi Dakai and Li Kaifeng led their troops to attack Guilin. In the east, Yang Xiuqing and Lin Fengxiang led troops to attack Wuzhou. In the south, two young generals, Li Xiuqing and Chen Yuqing, led troops to attack Lianzhou. Of the four armies, the western and northern armies were like a hot knife through butter. The players' territories were beaten until they could not retaliate. They either surrendered or were annihilated. The rebel army was like a snowball, getting bigger and bigger. The lords in Guang, she had already formed an alliance. It even had a tragic name, the Alliance to the Death. Unfortunately, faced with the aggressive rebel army, they were still retreating in defeat. The fall of Zhen and Guilin was only a matter of time. The Eastern Army encountered the stubborn resistance of Qiyou's army. After establishing Qiyu City, Qiyu had led his troops to occupy the whole of Wuzhou. The rebel army wanted to invade Wuzhou, so naturally, they had kicked an iron plate. Qiyou's army was made up of elite mountain barbarian warriors. The rebel army, led by Yang Xiuqing, naturally had no problem dealing with ordinary player lords. However, if they encountered the mountain barbarian army, they immediately showed their true colors. Aside from their morale and the ability of their generals, the rebel army that had been hastily formed was no different from a peasant army. In terms of weapons and equipment, they lagged far behind. The Eastern Army was blocked, but Yang Xiuqing was not discouraged. She simply set up the eastern camp on the border between Wuzhou and Xuanzhou. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Xiuqing and Lin Fengxiang began to train the troops and rectify military discipline. Qiyu City was limited by its population and did not initiate any provocations. Thus, the Eastern Army was in a deadlock. Similarly, the Southern Army was in a deadlock. In the middle of April, Li Xiuqing and Chen Yuqing led an army of 20,000 and advanced toward Lianzhou in high spirits. When they arrived at the mouth of the canyon, they could not help but be dumbfounded when they saw the huge fortress built there. At that time, there was still 1.5 months before the completion of the Milan fortress. However, the outer walls of the fortress had already been built. All that was left was the construction of the internal buildings and defensive facilities. The rebel army, which did not even bring basic siege equipment, was helpless against the towering fortress. Helpless, Li Xiuqing could only lead his troops and set up Camp 10 li away from the fortress, setting up the southern camp. In view of the current situation, General Bai Qi had personally come to Mulan Fortress to oversee it. The 3rd and 4th Divisions of the Dragongxiang Legion had also stationed themselves in the fortress. It was fine if the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom did not come, but if they really dared to invade, they would definitely make them suffer. After listening to Cobra's report, Ouyang Shua was silent. With the strength of the Dragongxiang Legion, it would not be difficult for them to break through the Southern Army, while the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was attacking from all sides, take over Tianjing, and then defeat the entire rebel army. The problem was this really the best time? Due to the setting of the wilderness, to a lord, land was not the most important resource. Population and various other resources were the most valuable assets. This was also the biggest difference between a territorial war and a war in reality. If it was only for the sake of seizing land, Ouyang Shua could use the Dragongxiang Legion. With an invincible army, he could wipe out the rebels. Not to mention Guangxi, he could even take down Lingnan in one fell swoop. The problem was, what would happen after he took it down? Taking over a vast but sparsely populated territory would only bring harm and no benefit. Therefore, a territorial war was a test of a lord's ability to grasp the right timing. If the war was started too early, the fruit would not ripen, and it would not be worth it. If the war was started too late, the enemy would have already taken advantage of the situation. It would not be easy to take down the territory. The appearance of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was a great opportunity for Ouyang Shua. If he allowed them to conquer Guangxi, manage Guangxi, and make the cake of Guangxi bigger and stronger, it would undoubtedly be the best choice for them to reap the fruits of their labor. This was another strategy that Ouyang Shua proposed after the raising venomous insects strategy in the Lianzhou Basin. He called it the raising wolves strategy. Compared to raising venomous insects, the difficulty of raising wolves was not to be eaten by the wolves. With the momentum of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's development, it was already a foregone conclusion that they would take down Zhun and Guilin. They might even continue to expand into Yunnan and Guizhou. By that time, could the Dragonxiang Legion really suppress the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom? It would probably be impossible. Therefore, it would create a situation where the tail was too big to fall. However, Ouyang Shuo was not willing to attack now. If they took down the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom now, the Deadly Alliance and Qiyu City would also benefit. It wouldn't be easy to take care of the Death Alliance. There was no doubt that if they saw an opportunity, the Deadly Alliance would definitely ask for help from the Yellow Alliance and collude with them, just like what happened in Duanren County. Ouyang Shuo did not want to fight so hard every time. He hoped that he could conquer the entire Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region as easily as crushing dry weeds. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was undoubtedly a good chess piece. Therefore, to achieve Ouyang Shuo's strategic goal, the difficulty was to allow the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom to expand, ensure that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom did not get out of control, and at the same time, guard against Qiyu City. Qiyu City should not be underestimated. According to the Cobra's report, Qiyu City had a regular army of 30,000. If necessary, they could temporarily recruit 20,000 to 30,000 soldiers from various tribes. The mountain barbarian tribes in 100,000 mountains had all moved to Wuzhou. Not only that, the mountain barbarians, including the stream barbarians, had also begun to gather in Wuzhou. Wuzhou had become the base camp and holy land of the barbarians. If they did not control Qiyu City, it would also become a huge hidden danger. There was news that Qiyu, with the support of various tribes, was already preparing to establish the Jiuli Kingdom in Wuzhou. Once the kingdom was established, the will of the barbarians would be united and would rise again. At that time, even if they conquered the Jiuli Kingdom, it was unknown whether they could tame the people of the Jiuli Kingdom like they tamed the mountain barbarian tribes. The situation that Shanghai City was facing was not optimistic. Ouyang Shuo would not forget that he was the #1 enemy of the Eye of Qiyu. Ouyang Shuo was in a dilemma about how to deal with the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and Qiyu City. Fortunately, he was not fighting alone. After the Cobra left, Ouyang Shuo immediately sent a message to Mulan Yu, asking her to inform Bai Qi to come to the base camp through the teleportation formation in Mulan City tomorrow. There was an important military matter to discuss. April 26th, at 9 o'clock in the morning, Bai Qi returned to Shanghai City through the teleportation formation in Mulan Mansion. Ouyang Shuo summoned the Chief of Military Affairs Du Ruhui and the Chief of Operations Zhao Kuo to discuss the Northern Expedition with General Bai Qi. The Chief of Military Intelligence, Cobra, was allowed to attend the military meeting. Under Ouyang Shuo's instructions, Cobra reported yesterday's information again. After the report was done, Cobra left. The following military meeting was extremely confidential, and only Ouyang Shuo and the other three could attend. Ever since Zhao Kuo became the Chief of Operations, he had not shown any ability. After listening to Cobra's report, his eyes lit up. He knew that the opportunity to show his ability had come. To be continued. Chapter 381. Ouyang Shuo briefly explained his strategy of raising wolves. Then, he looked around and said, 32? 32? That's the situation. If you have any suggestions, feel free to speak your mind. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Kuo stood up and bowed to Ouyang Shuo. Marquis, please speak. Ouyang Shuo knew that Zhao Kuo's strategic vision was brilliant. It was under Zhao Kuo's persuasion that Zhao State decided to take over the land of Shangdang offered by the state of Han. Although Chongping was defeated, the initial strategic decision was very correct. Otherwise, Qin State would have easily taken over Shangdang, and Zhao State would have been defeated even faster. Zhao Kuo glanced at Bai Qi. Normally, as the commander of the Northern Expedition, Bai Qi should have the most right to speak. Now that he had beaten him to it, he wondered how Bai Qi would feel. As for Bai Qi, his face was expressionless. No one could tell what he was thinking. Zhao Kuo shook his head. Facing such an opponent, he felt a little helpless. He said, "The current situation is nothing more than a strategic choice between the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and Qiyu City. Should we take down the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom first and then destroy Qiyu City, or should we take down Qiyu City first and then besiege the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom?" Ouyang Shuan nodded when he heard this. Indeed, with the momentum of the two forces' development, one of them had to be restrained. Otherwise, if the two forces were allowed to develop like this, the Dragon Xiong Corps would not be able to suppress them. According to the Marquis strategy, it is obviously not the right time to alarm the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Therefore, the only choice is to take down Qiyu City first. In this way, we can remove the threat from the 100,000 Mountains and prevent it from threatening the headquarters of Lianzhou County. At the same time, we can replenish our forces and form 1 or 2 heavy infantry divisions. Zhao Kuo was the first to put forward his opinion. Take down Qiyu City. What do you think? Ouyang Shuo did not express his opinion. Instead, he asked for Du Ruhuwei and Bai Qi's opinions. Du Ruhuwei's specialty was decisiveness, not scheming. Upon hearing this, Bai Qi took the responsibility and said, "I agree. Let's take down Qiyu City first. But there is one thing. If we want to attack Qiyu City, we have to go around Sun Province. What is the military office's plan?" Zhao Kuo was stunned when he heard this. Just a moment ago, he was still feeling proud that Bai Qi had no choice but to agree with his judgment. He did not expect Bai Qi to throw out such a difficult problem. There were only 2 ways to attack Jiuyo City from Lianzhou County. One was to walk out of Fort Milan and enter Wuzhou from the borders of Xuanzhou. In this way, they would encounter the southern and eastern armies of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. It was obvious that the idea of sending troops from Sun Province had basically been rejected. The only way left was to pass through the 100,000 Mountains. Thinking of this, even Ouyang Shuo had a headache. This was the 100,000 Great Mountains. Even if the Military Intelligence Division spies were traversing alone, they would still end up in a sorry state. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was for an army to pass through. In the Dragongxiang Legion, other than the 2 mountain barbarian heavy infantry brigades of the 3rd Division, the other divisions did not dare to guarantee that they would be able to lead their troops through the 100,000 Mountains. However, Ouyang Shuo did not dare to send out the mountain barbarian heavy infantry brigade to attack Qiyu City. Qiu's position in the hearts of the barbarians was just too lofty. Letting the mountain barbarians' heavy infantry attack Qiyu City was no different from walking on a tightrope. Even under the constraints of military discipline, the barbarian soldiers would not do anything out of line. Whether it was their morale or their morale, they would inevitably be affected. Instead of that, it was better to not let the mountain barbarians' heavy infantry go to the front line. What was even more fatal was that half of the Dragongxiang Legion's troops were cavalry troops. Letting the cavalry troops pass through the 100,000 Mountains? It was simply a fantasy. Facing Bai Qi's question, Du Ruhuwei and Zhao Kuo were thinking hard. Especially Zhao Kuo. He was too eager to defeat Bai Qi, even if it was in terms of strategy. The study suddenly became quiet. Ouyang Shuo glanced at Zhao Kuo and saw that his forehead was slightly covered in cold sweat. Obviously, at this moment, Zhao Kuo's brain was working at high speed. Ouyang Shuo hoped that this chief of operations could bring him a pleasant surprise. After a long time, just when Ouyang Shuo was a little disappointed, Zhao Kuo suddenly raised his head. His eyes flashed with a bright light, and his whole body seemed to be glowing. "I got it. Marquis, I've thought of a solution." Zhao Kuo suddenly stood up and danced with joy. His voice could not conceal the joy and excitement. Hearing this, Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said with a smile, "Please speak." Seeing this, Zhao Kuo looked a little embarrassed. Knowing that he had been rash, he smiled apologetically and calmed his mind. He sat back in his seat and said seriously, "Marquis, in fact, other than Sun Province, there is another place we can attack Wu Province. It is Zhaoqing." Zhaoqing? The one who asked the question was Du Ruhuwei. As the head of military affairs, Du Ruhui was very familiar with the surrounding terrain. Zhaoqing was indeed connected to Wu province, but it was located in Lingnan. That's right, but Zhaoqing is located in Lingnan. It is not connected to our territory at all. How can the army reach Zhaoqing? Seeing Zhao Kuo's confidence, Du Ruhui was still puzzled. Hearing this, Zhao Kuo smiled confidently and said, "There are two ways." "Oh, I'd like to hear the details." Du Ruhui did not expect Zhao Kuo to think of two ways. First, the army can be transported to Tianchuan County and then marched to Wu province. That's not right. Du Ruhui immediately rejected the idea. A trace of disappointment flashed through his heart as he said resolutely, "Attacking Chiyu City will require at least 3 to 4 divisions, plus a large number of logistical support personnel. Just the cost of transportation alone will be no less than 50 to 60,000 gold coins. It will be enough to drag down the territory's finances." That's not right. It's not right at all. As the head of military affairs, Du Ruhui had to consider the issue of military expenditure. Because of the rapid increase in the military budget, there were already voices of complaints from the finance department. Fortunately, Ouyang Shua had personally stepped forward to suppress the complaints and settle the dispute. As the head of military affairs, Du Ruhui was truly under enormous pressure. This pressure could not be felt by the commanding generals. Only he, the head of military affairs, could withstand it. Attacking Chiyu City was a military operation in itself, and it would consume a large amount of money and resources. Taking Chiyu City, with the mountain barbarians' construction ability, would not only not improve the territory's finances, but it would also become a burden. Needless to say, if they were to reorganize 1 or 2 heavy infantry divisions when the time came, Du Ruhui could imagine the cold face of the head of finance, Cui Yingyu. At this time, of course, he would not approve such a wasteful military plan. Hearing this, Zhao Kuo was not discouraged. He said, "If that's the case, then there's only the second option." "What is it?" Du Ruhui's tone was already somewhat restless. Zhao Kuo said in a powerful voice, "Take Lizhou, then borrow Zhaoqing to attack Wuzhou." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Obviously, this was Zhao Kuo's complete plan. It was a bold move. In order to take Chiyu City, Zhao Kuo suggested launching a preliminary war to take Lizhou at the southernmost tip of Lingnan, then using Lizhou as a springboard to attack Chiyu City. Lizhou and Jingzhou were separated by the sea, and Lianzhou County was only separated by a forest. Previously, when Ouyang Shua was in Lingnan, he had thought of taking Lizhou to prevent other lords from coveting Jingzhou Island. Zhao Kuo's proposal was completely in line with Ouyang Shua's Lingnan strategy. It had to be said that it was very bold. Ouyang Shua, Bai Qi, and the others were all stuck in the same train of thought. They had never thought of attacking from Lingnan. On the other hand, Zhao Kuo's bold and unconstrained ideas broke the stalemate. Even Bai Qi's eyes lit up, and he looked at Zhao Kuo with admiration. At this moment, Zhao Kuo had calmed down, and he did not show any complacent expression toward Bai Qi's praise. Obviously, successfully turning the tables had removed the knot in Zhao Kuo's heart to a certain extent. With the knot in his heart removed, Zhao Kuo felt as if he had been reborn. Zhao Kuo was very glad that he had made the decision to join Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua's eyes were like lightning, and he saw everything. Ouyang Shua was also gratified by this. Before this, Zhao Kuo was a little emotional, and he could not be considered a qualified chief of operations. Now he was on the right track. Ouyang Shua looked around and said, "I agree with Chief Zhao's proposal. After you come down, the military office will draft a detailed battle plan and submit it to me for approval." Understood. Du Ruhui and Zhao Kuo stood up at the same time and nodded. In Shanghai City's army, all major battle plans were drawn up by the military office. The generals only had the power to make decisions during wartime. However, the power to mobilize troops was firmly in the hands of the military office. Ouyang Shua looked at Bai Qi and said, "Chief General, tell me your opinion on the deployment of the army." Unlike other generals, As a chief general, Bai Qi had the right to participate in the decision-making of the army's higher-ups. He was not just a general who obeyed the orders of the military office. Hearing this, Bai Qi pondered for a moment, and then said, "We can't give up on the 100,000 mountains so easily. In my opinion, we can arrange for a group of infantry to pass through the 100,000 mountains as a surprise attack." This suggestion reflected Bai Qi's level. The two complemented each other, and this was the way of war. Zhao Ku was deeply impressed by Bai Qi's words. He really could not underestimate Bai Qi. "Chief General, please elaborate." "The Milan fortress will be guarded by the 3rd Division for the time being. The task of passing through the 100,000 mountains can be handed over to the 1st Division. The 2nd Division and the 4th Division will be the main force, and they will attack from Zhaoqing. For safety's sake, the Imperial Guard Division will be mobilized." Shanghai City had mobilized a total of 4 divisions, a total of 54,000 soldiers. Their goal was to take down Qiyu City in one fell swoop before the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom could react. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "All right. The task of attacking Thunder Province will be handed over to the Imperial Guard Division and the 2nd Division. The 4th Division will be stationed in Mulan Fortress for the time being." Thunder Province did not even need to mobilize 3 elite divisions. Once the army moved, it would be a huge consumption. To be continued. Chapter 382. The Battle of Thunder Province will still be commanded by the great general. Ouyang Shuo had no intention of personally commanding the army. Yes, Bai Qi did not pass on this responsibility. After the discussion, Ouyang Shuo announced the end of the meeting. The following work, including the drafting of the battle plan, the deployment of logistics, and the mobilization of the army, were all handled by the military office. This was the 2nd major battle launched by Shanghai City after the Battle of Lian Province. Just the preparation work alone would take at least half a month or even longer. The fastest way to attack Thunder Province was by sea. Thus, the military office also needed to coordinate with the 1st Fleet of the North Bay Fleet to be responsible for the transportation of troops and supplies. After the meeting, Ouyang Shuo summoned Black Snake. The territory plans to take down Thunder Province. The Black Snake Guards should be mobilized. Order the Quanzhou Intelligence Station to quickly infiltrate the various territories of Thunder Province and prepare for the military operation. Ouyang Shuo went straight to the point. Hearing this, Black Snake became spirited and said solemnly, "Marquis, please rest assured." The Black Snake Guards that had invested a huge amount of money had finally reached the point where they could test the results. Black Snake knew what this battle meant to the Black Snake Guards, and they could not afford any mistakes. "Go!" Black Snake left. Ouyang Shuo sat alone in his study and closed his eyes in deep thought. The Battle of Thunder Province was a battle that Shanghai City could not afford to lose. It was also the first time they fought outside their territory. Whether it was logistics or intelligence, it was a huge test. Other than the Black Snake Guards, the military office was also on the move. The mission of the military office was to quickly understand the geography of Thunder Province, as well as the number of troops in each territory, to provide intelligence to the army. The 2 intelligence agencies each had their own priorities. As the Lord, Ouyang Shuo had to consider more. He had to plan the situation of Thunder Province after the battle. After establishing Liuzhou County, who would be the county governor, was the biggest problem. There was not a qualified civil official in the territory who could take on this responsibility. Among the magistrates, only Wei Ran had this ability. Unfortunately, Shanghai City still needed him. Of all the departments in the Marquis' household, only Fan Zhongyan could take on such a heavy responsibility. Fan Zhongyan could not be mobilized. Tian Wenjing will be going to Cliff Mountain City soon, and the Marquis residents still needed Fan Zhongyan. Not only that, how to strengthen the management of the territory outside Thunder Province was also a problem. All in all, the matter was very complicated. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo felt a headache coming on. The reserve of civil officials in his territory was still too weak. There will always be a way out. Ouyang Shuo could only comfort himself like this. This kind of mentality was not something a lord should have. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo summoned Fan Zhongyan. He gave Fan Zhongyan a simple account of the military campaign to attack Lizhou and then Chiyu City. He then said, Sven, you have to take up the heavy responsibility. Starting now, you have to find qualified officials and prepare ahead of time to successfully take over Lizhou and Wuzhou. Fan Zhongyan's expression was a little awkward when he heard this. The construction of Cliff Mountain City and Bless City had already poached 2 batches of low-level officials. Even if the Southwest University China Hall and the schools of the various prefectures and counties provided an endless supply of students and low-level officials, it was still impossible for them to satisfy the needs of the 2 counties. Seeing Fan Zhongyan's expression, Ouyang Shuo lightly smiled and said, Sven, you don't need to frown. The most important thing is to select a batch of young officials with potential. As for the basic officials, they can be selected locally. Hearing that, Fan Zhongyan's expression relaxed. In that case, this humble subject understands. Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said, All right, go get busy. Yes. After Fan Zhongyan left, Ouyang Shuo wrote a letter to his brother-in-law, Songwon. Tianchuan County was located in the Zhaoqing region. Ouyang Shuo hoped that when the Shanghai City Army passed through Zhaoqing, Tianchuan County would be able to provide some logistical support. In return, the Shanghai City Army would stay in Zhaoqing for a short period of time and assist Tianchuan County in unifying the Zhaoqing region. Whether or not they could grasp this opportunity depended on Songwon's methods and the strength of Tianchuan County. In addition, there were probably still members of the Shanghai Alliance-Tianchuan Alliance in the Lizhou region. Ouyang Shuo asked Songwon to provide a list of names. As for these members, if they were willing to surrender, Ouyang Shuo would be lenient with them. After finishing his work, Ouyang Shuo could finally heave a sigh of relief. The various arrangements had finally paved the way for the army to attack Lizhou. This was what a lord should do, commanding the army to fight on the front lines. The lord would be responsible for clearing all obstacles outside the battlefield. April 28th. In the morning, Shanghai City welcomed a special guest. He was the Qin State's Jing Jian. This person was Wei Yang's recommendation and was also Wei Yang's most important right-hand man during the Qin State's reform. When he heard that Wei Yang had become an official in Shanghai City, Jing Jian specially came to visit him. This was the effect of gathering top-notch talents. For example, Jiang Shang had not become an official, but he had attracted Sun Wu and then Sun Bin, bringing a series of talents. As a legalist and a powerful figure in the Qin state, Wei Yang's influence could not be ignored. Among them, Ouyang Shuo's title of Lord of Heroes had also subtly influenced him. Jing Jian was a tall and thin middle-aged man. Because he was a general, his body was abnormally strong. This person was introverted and passionate. He looked gentle on the outside, but he was very resilient on the inside. He was a rare talent. Ouyang Shuo personally received Jing Jian and temporarily arranged for him to stay in the Marquis mansion. Name: Jing Jian, king level, dynasty, warring states, identity, Shanghai city resident, occupation, civil official loyalty, 75 commander, 55 martial power, 55 intelligence, 55 politics, 70 specialty. Recruiting talents increases territory's popularity by 5. Concern for the country and its people increases territory's efficiency by 20. Evaluation. Surname Mi, Jing of the Chu clan. Famous supervisor. He was a favorite of Duke Xiao and recommended Shangyang. After looking at Jing Jian's attributes, Ouyang Shuo was deep in thought. Jing Jian's attributes in all aspects were relatively ordinary. He did not have any outstanding specialties. What was rare was that he did not have any obvious shortcomings. He could easily adapt to both the military and political positions. Since Jing Jian was here for Wei Yang, Ouyang Shuo naturally had to consider when assigning him duties. It just so happened that Ouyang Shuo wanted to make some changes to the Internal Affairs Bureau. Jing Jian's arrival could not be better. Coincidentally, Wei Yang returned to Shanghai City the next day. He was travel-worn. When he learned that Jing Jian had come to join him, Wei Yong was also unusually happy. Previously, he had been loitering in the taverns and tea houses, but did not contact his old subordinates. He did not expect that as soon as he appeared in Shanghai City, his old subordinates would come to join him. It was really a happy thing to meet old friends. Looking at Wei Yang's expression, Ouyang Shua could roughly guess that Wei Yong must have gained something during his month of patrolling Lian province. After returning, he met old friends again. Naturally, he was overjoyed. That night, Ouyang Shua hosted a banquet in the Marquis's mansion to entertain Wei Yong and Jing Jian. At the banquet, the guests and the host were naturally happy. Wei Yong took the opportunity to talk about what he had seen and heard along the way. The foundation of Lian province was better than Wei Yong had imagined. It was even better than the Qin state back then. How could Ouyang Shua's painstaking planning go to waste? The painstakingly built Lian province was indeed Ouyang Shua's proud work. Whether it was the governance of the government or the people's livelihood, they were all above the passing line. Of course, it was not that there were no hidden dangers. The one that left the deepest impression on Wei Yong was that as the gap between the rich and poor of the people widened, local tyrants began to emerge in various places. Moreover, away from the headquarters, some bad things had already begun to rise. And this was where the responsibility of the Internal Affairs Bureau lay. Wei Yong was indeed Wei Yong. He hit the nail on the head when he saw a problem. After the banquet, Ouyang Shua brought the two to the study room and briefed them on their duties in advance. Both of them were quite satisfied with their respective positions. Ouyang Shua even consulted Wei Yong about the adjustment of the Internal Affairs Bureau structure and received a satisfactory answer. On the 30th of April, Ouyang Shua presided over the political meeting. Before the political discussion, Ouyang Shua introduced Wei Yong and Jing Jian to the officials present. Both of them were famous people in history. With a brief mention, the officials knew who they were. Especially Wei Yong. He was even more famous. Ouyang Shua looked around and said, "Before the political discussion, I will first announce a few personnel appointments and removals." As soon as he finished speaking, the hall fell silent. It had been a while since the Marquis had publicly announced personnel appointments and removals. Tian Wenjing is relieved of his position as the Internal Affairs Bureau Chief and transferred to the position of Cliff Mountain City's Castellan. Wei Yong will replace Tian Wenjing as the Internal Affairs Bureau Chief. The first appointment and removals was earth-shattering. The officials did not expect that the person to be transferred was actually a chief. From the Internal Affairs Bureau Chief to the Castellan seemed to have been demoted by one rank, but Tian Wenjing's expression did not change at all. Any meticulous minister would be able to figure out that there was another reason for this terror. Tian Wenjing and Wei Yong stepped forward at the same time to accept their appointments. "Thank you for your trust, Marquis." Wei Yong stepped forward and bowed to express his gratitude. When Wei Yong first appeared, Disciplinary Chief Song Yin's face was already filled with joy. Strictly speaking, Song Yin could also be considered half a disciple of the school of legalism. Seeing that Wei Yong had become the head of the Internal Affairs Bureau and his immediate superior, Song Yin became even more excited. Ouyang Shua continued, "The Internal Affairs Department's audit department will be renamed as the Monitoring Department. In addition to its original audit duties, it will also be responsible for supervising the various prefectures, counties, and officials of the territory." It was another bombshell. The newly renamed Monitoring Department was definitely one of the top 3 departments in terms of authority. Chapter 383. After the political discussion ended, the aftermath continued. Tian Wenjing's transfer was like a layer of fog, making people unable to understand it. Gradually, there was news that Marquis Jun intended to let Division Chief Tian govern Jingzhou Island. At this point, the officials suddenly realized why Division Chief Tian was not only not depressed, but also vaguely in high spirits. The county governor of a county was not inferior to the division chief. In the foreseeable future, the prefectural governor would be the highest administrative official in charge of the region. Qin Shun's transfer to the position of the tax division chief did not cause any waves. With his illustrious experience and professional skills in the audit division, it was not too big of a problem for him to be in charge of the tax division. Qin Shun's transfer was a reinforcement for the finance department. Supervisor Jing's position instantly raised the value of being a department head of the Marquis Manor by several levels. After Zhao Kuo became the Director General of Operations, the group of civil officials finally had a famous historical figure take up the post of Director General. As the territory continued to expand, this trend would become more and more obvious. What followed was that the positions of the division chiefs could not be guaranteed. Qian Lifei's demotion caused a small earthquake in the bureaucracy. Song San, who had been demoted previously, was only demoted to deputy division chief, which was equivalent to a demotion of half a rank. Qian Lifei, on the other hand, was directly demoted from the Marquis Manor's Director General to a local manor's level of Director General. If Qian Lifei was added to the establishment of a county, it would be equivalent to dropping 2 ranks. How could people not be shocked? No one knew why Qian Lifei had fallen to such a state where he was disliked by the Marquis. Even his superior, Cui Yingyu, was confused about this. It was clear that Ouyang Shuo had no intention of explaining himself. After the political discussion ended, Tian Wenjing brought Wei Yang and Jing Jian to hand over the work of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Tomorrow, he would be accompanied by the Marquis to Cliff Mountain City to take up his post. The moment Wei Yang officially entered the Ministry of Internal Affairs, a system announcement spread throughout the China region. System announcement. The representative of the School of Legalism, Wei Yang, has become an official in the Mountain Sea territory and is now in charge of the Internal Affairs Bureau. He has accepted disciples and fulfilled the 3 requirements for a school to enter the Mountain Sea city. The School of Legalism of the 100 Schools of Thought has officially entered the Mountain Sea city. System announcement. The School of Legalism of the 100 Schools of Thought has officially entered Shanghai City. Shanghai City will be given the title of Holy Land of Legalism as a reward. Congratulations to player Not Say You Have No Clothes. The office of the Ministry of Internal Affairs was a legalist training ground. The officials of the Ministry of the Interior were all legalists. With Wei Yang in charge of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, it was only natural that the legalists would enter Shanghai City. The announcement caused an uproar in the China server. The last time the militarists entered Shanghai City, the players were mentally prepared. The arrival of the legalists this time was too sudden. No one expected that Marquis Lianzhou would kidnap the famous Wei Yang in such a short time. Legalist great son, great Wei Yang, please accept my knees. I'm a disciple of the School of Legalism. I swear to follow the Lord of Shang to my death. Form a group and head to Shanghai City to observe the Shang monarch. Register as soon as possible. Without a doubt, there was only one main character that the players were discussing, and that was Wei Yang. Even Ouyang Shuo had no choice but to become a supporting character. With the arrival of the legalists, Ouyang Shuo had finally taken the first step in the reproducing the 100 Schools of Thought mission that he had previously accepted. There were only 6 months left until the deadline of the mission. Thinking about it carefully, it was really a huge pressure. Ouyang Shuo suppressed the worry in his heart and checked the attributes of the Legalist Holy Land title. Legalist Holy Land. The integrity of the territory's civil officials increases by 25. The success rate of breaking through bottlenecks increases by 10. The quality of the territory's civil officials increases by 15. And the atmosphere of the territory's officialdom is purified by 20. As a major sect that was equally famous as the militarists, the Legalist Holy Land, his attributes were equally powerful. Ouyang Shuo nodded in satisfaction. His efforts were not in vain. With the blessing of the Legalist Holy Land, the overall quality of the territory's civil officials had increased by a level. This was undoubtedly a timely reign for the territory that was about to expand without restraint. 1st of May, Cliff Mountain City. Ouyang Shuo and his party appeared at the Cliff Mountain City's teleportation array. Outside the teleportation array, Secretary Lang by Nanpu had been waiting for a long time. As for Sun Xiaoya, she would not come to greet Ouyang Shuo. At this moment, she was probably mingling with Lin Jing and the Love Knot. With 3 women in a play, Cliff Mountain City was livelier than imagined. Ouyang Shuo walked out of the teleportation array and saw Bai Nanpu. He patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Not bad. You've worked hard during this period." Hearing this, Bai Nanpu felt a burst of excitement in his heart. To be able to share the burden of the marquis, this humble subject is extremely honored. In reality, the announcement of yesterday's political discussion had already spread to Cliff Mountain City. Bai Nanpu also knew a little about the small earthquake in the Marquis's residence. At this time, obtaining the Marquis's approval meant something different. Ouyang Shuo nodded and turned his head to say, "Yangon, take a look. This is Cliff Mountain City. What do you think?" Tian Wenjing smiled slightly and said, "To be honest, it's much better than this humble subject imagined." It had only been less than 2.5 months since the construction of Cliff Mountain City had been completed. As far as the eye could see, the inner city walls had already been completed, and the construction of the outer city walls had already begun. The inner city had already begun to take shape. The city planning was orderly, and the management was in good order. The outer city was in a state of bustle. Construction sites were everywhere, and the work was in full swing. Such a scene was enough to be called not bad. Tian Wenjing glanced at Bai Nanpu and said carelessly, "Being a secretary is amazing. How could Bai Nanpu dare to accept such praise?" Trembling with fear, he said, "This humble subject does not dare to be greedy. The reason Cliff Mountain City can reach this scale is all thanks to Miss Sun's planning and coordination. This humble subject only did some logistical work." Tian Wenjing still wanted to say something, but Ouyang Shuo had already waved his hand and said, "Let's talk in the government office." Strictly speaking, Cliff Mountain City was Binger's territory. Therefore, according to Ouyang Shuo's instructions, a separate government office was built outside the Lord's residence to serve as an administrative office. As for the Lord's residence, Sun Xiaoye was temporarily living there. As the Tiger Troop entered Cliff Prefecture, they began to sweep the surrounding aboriginals and roving bandits. On one hand, it was to eliminate hidden dangers, and, on the other hand, it was to promote Binger's noble rank. After a period of sweeping, the accumulated merit points had successfully promoted Binger's noble rank to that of a first-rank viscount. She was also very close to becoming a third-rank earl. Therefore, strictly speaking, Cliff Mountain City was still a third-rank town. It could only spawn 75 refugees a day, which was a drop in the bucket for the huge Cliff Mountain City. Next, when Binger's noble rank was promoted to a third-rank earl, Cliff Mountain City would naturally be promoted to a first-rank county town. When that time came, it would be very impressive to be able to spawn 300 refugees a day. As for the bandits attacking the city when it was promoted to a county town, with the Tiger Troop holding the fort, there was really nothing to worry about. The government office, the meeting room. Bai Nanpu began to give a detailed report on the construction of Cliff Mountain City. Ouyang Shuo and Tian Wenjing listened attentively. First, the government office. Bai Nanpu had already built the framework of the government office according to the unified plan of his territory. Most of the officials were transferred from Shanghai City. A small portion of them were recruited from the refugees that had just respawned. It should not be forgotten that the village creation token of Cliff Mountain City was also gold grade. From time to time, it could still spawn some useful talents. 1 or 2 of them were no less talented than Bai Nanpu. Ouyang Shuo no longer interfered with the appointment and dismissal of personnel in Cliff Mountain City. Tian Wenjing was in charge. Second, the construction of the project. Nanshan Port had already been completed. There was an endless stream of merchant ships coming and going from Nanshan Port and North Sea Port. After 3 migrations, the route between the 2 ports had already been fixed. It was extremely safe, and there was no longer a need for fleet escorts. Moreover, the first formation of the North Sea Bay Fleet had recently been vigorously cleaning up the pirates in the North Sea Bay. In the future, the maritime trade route would only become safer. Some Chuanzhou merchants were even thinking of directly connecting the Chuanzhou port to Nanshan Port. Of course, this was only an idea. This sea area was filled with pirates. Without the Navy to act as the vanguard, no matter how crazy the merchants were, they would not dare to take the first bite. The construction of the inner city of Cliff Mountain City was also basically completed. All that was left was the construction of the outer city. According to the city plan, whether it was the shops and workshops of the large chambers of commerce or one thread, they were all built in the commercial area of the outer city. Therefore, at this moment, the outer city was even more lively than the inner city. Third, the industrial planning. The first phase of the salt pans in the 10-mile mudflat had already been reclaimed and had begun to produce sea salt. They could earn more than 8,000 gold coins every month. This was currently the largest source of income for Cliff Mountain City. Outside Cliff Mountain City, millions of acres of farmland had been reclaimed for planting rice. The spring sowing of rice had also been completed and was growing well. There were all kinds of manors, such as sugarcane plantations, rubber plantations, pineapple plantations, tea plantations, and pig farms. They were interspersed between the farmland and had a different kind of life. These manors and farms, limited by the population, were basically managed by the chambers of commerce and one thread. Cliff Mountain City only collected land rental fees, agricultural taxes, and commercial taxes according to the rules. What attracted the chambers of commerce was not only the resources in the Five-Finger Mountain. The manors and farms were also a cornucopia of treasures. The superior natural environment and climate of Cliff Prefecture were really suitable for growing sugarcane, rubber, pineapple, and other crops. Fourth, territorial defense. The Tiger Troop belonged to the Field Army. They were not stationed in Cliff Mountain City, but 10 miles north of the city, and set up a large camp as the Army's headquarters. Obviously, in Sun Bin's eyes, the natives in the north were the biggest threat to the territory. Within Cliff Mountain City, limited by the population, there was only a city defense camp, mainly responsible for the daily patrolling of the city and mediating disputes. Unlike Shanghai City, Cliff Mountain City was a mix of good and bad people. There were many players, and from time to time, conflicts would break out. After listening to Bai Nanpu's report, Ouyang Xuan nodded with satisfaction. The development of Cliff Mountain City was much better than he had expected. Tian Wenjing was naturally very satisfied. With such a foundation, he was even more confident that Cliff Mountain City would become the second largest city in the territory after Shanghai City. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.